A party of 3 comprised of the hero Eric, the warrior Golan, and the magician Luck just concluded a grueling battle against the formidable Majin ruler, a demonic entity. They managed to partially subdue the Majin ruler, severing one of its arms and inflicting severe damage before it retreated. The party members are relieved that this battle has momentarily come to an end, allowing them to finally reunite with their families after an extended period spent in another dimension. Golan attempts to engage in a conversation with Luck, but the magician appears entirely absorbed in contemplating what to do with the Majin's severed hand. Golan playfully teases Luck for being so immersed in his work that he seems to neglect personal relationships. However, Luck appears to be confused why this would be a concern. Just as they're on the verge of exiting the interdimensional rift and returning to their own world, a sudden appearance of the formidable Majin's army hot on their heels takes them by surprise. Eric is astonished to see that there are still numerous enemies in pursuit. Luck realizes that he and his friends are already severely wounded, and if they were to continue fighting, it would likely lead to their annihilation. However, he understands the importance of keeping the hero Eric alive, as they have yet to defeat the Majin ruler. They'll need the hero's powers for that crucial battle. In a surprise twist, he urges his friends to leave him behind and go back. Though the other 2 members initially object, Luck reminds them of their families waiting for them. He implores them to escape, assuring them that he'll catch up soon. With reluctance, the 2 men begin running toward the closing rift, leaving Luck to face the approaching army alone. Once the rift is sealed, Luck launches an attack on the Majin's army, vowing to protect both Eric and Golan. Luck continues to engage in an endless battle against the Majin army, until he loses track of the countless foes he's defeated. After what feels like an eternity, the Majin army's commander appears and a fierce showdown unfolds. In a moment of weariness, the commander seizes Luck, initiating a life-draining process with their life transfer draining touch. Just as Luck's life force nears depletion, a miraculous learning complete notification jolts him. What happens next is astonishing. Luck gains the ability to harness the Majin commander's life transfer draining touch as his own power, and he uses it against her. Life transfer draining touch is a skill that lets you not only drain mana from your foes, but also rejuvenate your own magical energy and restore your health in the process. Learning is a skill that lets you instantly master any magic you've been hit with without any need for prior training. After the Majin's army commander falls, he seizes her sword, marveling at how effortlessly it channels mana. A grin crosses his face as he knows that with his mana restored and this new blade, he'll possess the strength to battle for years to come. In the real world, a young girl gazes out the window. Her mother urges her to go to bed and promises to extinguish the lights. The girl has a hunch that monsters might appear later that night, but her mother reassures her, citing the protection of the great sage over their land. As Luck fights the seemingly endless Majin's army, time becomes a blur, and he loses track of how long it's been since his companions departed. If drowsiness creeps in, he can cast a sorcery called Marionette on himself, originally a dark art used to control enemies, but this time he repurposes it on himself to keep fighting, even in his sleep, by manipulating his own body. After spending so much time in the interdimensional rift, he begins to lose even his sense of self. Ironically, the appearance of the Majin ruler rekindles Luck's emotions, because the moment he sets eyes on the Majin ruler, he remembers that he has a mission to fulfill before he rejoins his friends. The Majin ruler, now sporting a newly regenerated arm, gears up for a fierce battle. He swings his sword, but Luck effortlessly evades the attack, excitement in his eyes as he mentions mastering combat with high-class Majin within the interdimensional rift. Luck devises a cunning plan, luring the ruler closer with a combination of potent fire and sorcery. Just as the Majin ruler tries to seize him, Luck cleverly employs his clothing as a decoy, swiftly maneuvering behind the Majin ruler and activating life transfer draining touch. However, a magical barrier shields the Majin ruler from the skill. Seizing the opportunity, the monster lands a vicious slash, wounding Luck. He follows up with a powerful downward sword strike, which, despite Luck's attempt to block it, causes his sword acquired from the Majin commander to shatter upon contact and inflicts further injury. Yet Luck refuses to yield. In an instant, he triggers his Flame Prison ability, coupling it with a grand-scale life transfer draining touch. The battle takes an intense and engaging turn. As Luck immerses himself in the blazing inferno, he too starts to feel the scorching heat. However, this doesn't stop him from persistently siphoning the Majin's life force. After all, the Majin ruler's magical barrier needs to be drained to withstand the fiery prison, so it's only a matter of time before Luck's life-draining touch breaks through. A mischievous grin stretches across Luck's face, as he provokes the Majin ruler with a question, inquiring whether the ruler would prefer to be reduced to ashes in the fiery prison or let his life force be sucked dry. The tension builds in this fiery showdown. A little while later, Luck emerges from the ashes, triumphantly victorious in the battle. His eyes catch the Majin's sword firmly lodged in the ground, and a wide grin of joy stretches across his face. He's ecstatic because he's finally achieved his ultimate goal of safeguarding the heroes and the world. Stripped of his clothes by the intense flames, he starts to shiver from the cold. With an empty wallet and no clothes, he contemplates the idea of selling the Majin ruler's sword. As he finally makes up his mind to depart the interdimensional rift, he can't help but wonder how much time he spent fighting there. Was it just a few months, or perhaps a whole year? Finally, he returns to his own dimension, but to a location he doesn't recognize. Spotting a sign pointing to the main road, he decides to follow it. After a while, he arrives in the royal capital, but it feels different from his memories, leaving him wondering about all the changes. As he strolls by the guards at the gate, they're initially shocked by his appearance, but then they stop him. He casually asks what's wrong, and they point out his lack of clothing. He honestly tells them that he went through an interdimensional journey and lost everything, including his bag and adventurer card. The guards start to suspect he may have run into highwaymen and been robbed, but he's too embarrassed to admit it. Despite his attempts to explain, they remain skeptical. Luck plays along, not wanting to prolong the situation any further. He assures them he'll be more careful going forward. Then they inquire about his identification papers, but Luck confesses he's lost to them. They agree to provide him with temporary papers. However, when they ask for his name and he says, "Luck," the guards react with surprise. Later, they outfit Luck in some borrowed clothes before allowing him into the city. Walking through the bustling market, he appreciates the guards' kindness, and notes how the country seems more orderly than he remembered. He plans to visit his party members first and then head to the guild. Luck stops a passing woman and asks for directions to Golan's house. She points him to a grand mansion, leaving Luck in awe of Golan's ability to reside in such an enormous estate. Upon arriving at the grand mansion, the gatekeeper inquires about his purpose, and he promptly replies that he's in search of Golan. The gatekeeper, curious, questions if he has an appointment, to which he answers in the negative. The gatekeeper regretfully explains that entry without an appointment isn't possible. He attempts to convey to the gatekeeper that he should inform Golan that Luck is the visitor, but it seems many imposters have been pretending to be Luck before. The gatekeeper mistakenly assumes he's just another impersonator and instructs him to leave, forbidding his return. Luck doesn't take this personally, understanding that his rough appearance complete with a sword might raise suspicion. He resolves to return but with a new wardrobe, and also plans to get his adventurer's card reissued first. As he heads towards the guild, something catches Luck's eye. A massive statue of a man that wasn't there as far back as his memories could reach. Curiosity gets the best of him, and he flags down a passerby to inquire about the identity of the stone figure. Assuming Luck's rural attire means he's unfamiliar with the city's history, the passerby proudly informs Luck that it's a statue of the hero, Luck, who bravely sacrificed his life a decade ago to save the country. To Luck's surprise, he discovers that the statue is in fact a likeness of himself. He can't help but exclaim that he doesn't think he's that good looking, but this offhanded remark does not sit well with the onlookers who overhear him, as they consider Luck their hero. The man he was conversing with then cautions him about the abundance of Luck fans in the area, and suggests it might not be wise to offend them. Luck examines the statue more closely, and assumes that his party members must have put it up, believing he was deceased. As he continues on to the guild, the information he heard about his supposed death 10 years ago keeps coming back to him, making him realize there's been a misunderstanding. When he arrives at the Adventurers Guild headquarters, he comes across a big poster celebrating the 10-year anniversary of his presumed death. It finally hits him that, indeed, a decade has passed. While at the guild asking to renew his license, he's treated as if he's much younger by everyone. When he takes a closer look at himself, he's astonished to find out that not only did 10 years pass in the rift, but he also appears 10 years younger than when he entered it. Golan finally locates Luck in the guild and rushes to embrace him, tears streaming down his face, much to the amazement of everyone present, who never thought they would witness their guild master in such a state. Later, Golan takes Luck to his office and offers him some delectable snacks, which Luck eagerly devours. Curious, Luck asks Golan how he knew he was at the guild, and Golan confesses that he received word that someone named Luck was looking for him, so he anticipated that they would come to the guild if it was indeed Luck. As Luck continues to enjoy his snacks, Golan advises him to slow down to avoid an upset stomach. Golan then orders some rice water, and soon a hooded figure carrying a tray enters through the door. To Luck's surprise, the figure reveals himself as Eric, and Luck notices that even the ever-dashing Eric has aged. Eric becomes emotional and expresses gratitude to Luck for returning, as they had believed he was no longer alive. Following their meal, the reunited group reminisces about cherished memories. However, Eric and Golan break into tears once again, and Luck playfully teases them for their emotional outbursts. Eric jokes that it's due to the effects of aging. Luck's two friends finally realize that Luck hasn't aged at all. In fact, he seems to have grown younger. Luck speculates that absorbing a significant amount of the Majin ruler's life force before defeating him might be the reason for his reversed aging. Eric and Golan are incredibly surprised by this news, finding it hard to believe that Luck single-handedly defeated the Majin ruler. They express that Luck's achievement, defeating not just the Majin's army but the ruler as well, is as mighty as the entire country's military power. Although Luck thinks they might be exaggerating, Eric insists they're not, explaining that the country had been preparing for years for the Majin ruler's return. But now Luck has already defeated him. Golan goes on to address Eric as a king, and suggests rewarding Luck, which astonishes Luck since he knows Eric doesn't come from a royal lineage. However, Eric clarifies that his service in repelling the Majin's army led to his recognition as a king. Golan explains that Eric is now the king of the country, while Golan himself has become the guild's Grand Master. Luck initially appears happy about their success, but they surprise him by granting him the title of Archduke Luck Franzen. Luck is bewildered because he never thought of himself as a noble and had no last name. Eric explains that it's a reward for his sacrifice, and Golan adds that the other nobles supported the decision, making it easy. Luck confides in his friends that he wants to keep his survival a secret from the public, to avoid power struggles with other nobles. However, Eric reveals that he has already discussed and agreed on the matter with the other nobles, leaving Luck no choice. Luck approaches Golan with a unique request to reapply as a new adventurer, wiping away his history as an S rank. He believes it's a golden opportunity for a fresh start. Despite their initial hesitation, Eric eventually grasps Luck's reasons and asks Golan to craft a new identity for him, to which Golan obliges. The new card shows his name as Locke, with only his middle name being displayed, and his true name becomes Luck Locke Franzen, with his S-rank status concealed. Golan offers him a room to rest, and Luck spends a week at Golan's house, catching up on sleep and regaining his strength. Locke finally wakes up after a deep sleep, and to his surprise, the butler informs him that he's been asleep for a whole week. The butler then mentions that Golan is waiting in the dining hall. Locke heads there to greet Golan, who is relieved that Locke is finally awake and must have been worried. Locke reassures Golan to not be concerned, and starts to dig into the delicious breakfast Golan is having. However, Golan serves him specially made rice water, which Locke assumes is because he hasn't eaten in a week. Golan inquires about Locke's plans for the day, and Locke explains that he's going to look for work at the guild. He also asks for a new magic satchel, as he's beginning his adventure anew, and Golan kindly volunteers to prepare one for him. Once Locke finishes his preparations, he heads to the Adventurers Guild. On his way, a girl practicing her sword skills overhears the gatekeeper from Golan's gate, apologizing for being rude to Locke the other day. Intrigued, the lady discreetly observes them from behind a tree. Locke reassures the gatekeeper that it's not a problem, and the gatekeeper thanks him for his understanding. Locke bids him farewell. Later, Locke stands in front of his stone statue, feeling that he won't easily get used to it. As he continues to gaze at the statue, a young boy suddenly rushes past and trips, falling to the ground. The boy's mother scolds him for running, and when the boy starts to cry, she consoles him, saying that crybabies can't become impressive individuals like Locke. The boy promises never to cry again. Upon hearing this, Locke winces and believes that it's better if people don't use others as an excuse to educate children. When he arrives at the Adventurers Guild headquarters, he observes the absence of requests to deal with dragons or Majin, leading him to conclude that the country must be enjoying peaceful times. He proceeds to sift through the beginner quests, searching for a challenging one with a modest reward, and eventually finds such a task. Locke submits the job request to the guild administrator for approval. However, she questions his ability to handle the job solo. Locke asserts his competence, but she insists that it's perilous for a newcomer to face goblins alone. He tries to persuade her that he can manage it, but she remains resolute in not allowing him to go alone. Suddenly, Locke hears a voice from behind, asking if he would like to join them for a journey. He turns to find a young boy and girl and inquires about their identity. They reveal that they are fellow F-rank adventurers. The boy is a sorcerer, Ario, and the girl is a scout archer, Jeannie. They mention needing a frontliner for their team. Before Locke can contemplate the offer, the guild administrator swiftly approves it, leaving Locke with no choice but to agree. As they head toward the forest, Ario introduces himself as an 18-year-old fireball caster, while Jeannie introduces herself as a 17-year-old archer. They explain that they're siblings, specialized in exterminating goblins in the countryside. Considering Locke entered the interdimensional rift at the age of 30 and fought for a decade, he's actually a 40-year-old man. However, revealing this would be odd, so he simply tells them he's a bit older than they are. However, they're skeptical because Locke looks younger than they are. After a while, they take a break and inquire about Locke's choice to accept goblin subjugation requests, despite the complexity and modest rewards. Locke doesn't reply directly, but instead asks why they took on the task themselves. They explain that their impoverished village suffered from goblin attacks and couldn't afford to hire help, so they assumed the responsibility of dealing with goblins. Later, they realized that other places in the world also faced goblin threats, leading them to become adventurers. Genie assumes that Locke must have a similar reason, and Locke decides to confess to avoid further questions. He finds the two adventurers kind, and believes it's his duty as their elder to guide young adventurers like them. Genie questions fellow travelers for details regarding the goblin attacks. After gathering information, she concludes that the goblin den likely resides in a specific mountain, estimating their numbers to be approximately 14. They opt to follow the goblin's tracks. Locke acknowledges Genie's exceptional scouting abilities, which seem beyond what's expected from an F rank. However, he's aware that she has underestimated the goblin count due to missing the camouflaged footprints. This suggests that another more intelligent creature is guiding the goblins. Although Locke contemplates sharing his deductions, he decides not to, preferring they figure it out for themselves. They trace the goblins to a mountain tunnel guarded by numerous monsters. Locke observes that the tunnel is both deep and lengthy, and because of its haphazard layout, it's vulnerable to flanking. Locke informs the siblings of his plan to take the lead, with the Genie providing backup using her bow, while Aereo preserves his magic. He swiftly eliminates one of the goblin leaders, aware he could take out two at once with a single sword strike, but he opts to let the others handle the remaining foes. As they progress through the tunnel, they continue to deal with more goblins. After a while, they manage to defeat most of the goblins, and they decide it's time to take a break. Aereo and Genie appear quite worn out after battling approximately 30 goblins. Locke then inquires if Aereo can still conjure a fireball, to which Aereo replies that he can, but he's running low on stamina. Genie also mentions that she's nearly out of arrows. Aereo suggests they retreat for now and return when they've recovered. Locke agrees, acknowledging that continuing as adventurers with depleted mana and arrows would be unwise. However, just as they're about to depart, they hear a loud roar and the heavy footsteps of an approaching monster. The monster is revealed to be a goblin lord, and Aereo recalls that F rankers can't handle such an opponent. Even C rankers would struggle. Locke is confident that he can defeat the goblin lord, but he suspects there's an even more powerful monster in charge, as the goblin lord doesn't seem like one to lead other goblins. Suddenly, a beast girl appears and attacks the goblin lord, urging Locke's party to escape. Locke, however, decides to stay behind, instructing only Aereo and Genie to run. While the girl battles the goblin lord, Locke, who's been observing, offers his assistance. She is surprised to see him and questions why he hasn't fled yet. Locke explains that there's no need to run, which frustrates her, and she urges him to stay out of her way. With her struggling against the monster, Locke warns her that at her current pace, she's likely to lose. She takes offense and questions if he's implying that she's weaker than the goblin lord. Locke clarifies that's not what he meant, but before he can finish, her sword suddenly shatters, and he continues, explaining that her sword wasn't strong enough. The goblin makes another attack at her, but she narrowly evades it. Locke once more offers his assistance, but her refusal comes with anger once again. She attempts to defend herself with a dagger, but the goblin lord knocks it away. Just as the goblin lord is about to deliver a finishing blow with his spiked club, Locke takes action without further inquiry, and swiftly dispatches the goblin with a single, decisive strike. Locke steps in with his sword and saves the girl. He asks her if she's been hurt, and she retorts with a demand to know who he is. She's stunned and accuses him of being a liar when he introduces himself as an F-rank adventurer that was just passing by. He shows her his card so she can see for herself. Her next wonder is why he's so proud to be an F-rank adventurer in the first place. She then introduces herself as the daughter of Danton, the chief of the Eastern furry tribe, Shia, a B-rank adventurer. She thanks Locke for saving her and prostrates to show her gratitude, which makes Locke shy. She also apologizes for her impolite attitude earlier. If only she knew that he was that skilled, she wouldn't have told him to run away at first. Now she feels embarrassed. He tells her she made the right call by asking what she felt was a new adventurer to take cover. He then reintroduces himself as Locke, a veteran F-rank adventurer, whatever that means. They start to hear a noise from a deep well that startles Shia. Locke believes an enemy far stronger than the Goblin Lord is within the well. Whatever is within the well is aware of their presence and can only imagine that these two adventurers have come to sacrifice themselves. Because why else would they be here? Locke recalls earlier Shia referred to the Goblin Lord as Small Fry. This must mean there is something more powerful around. Locke explains further whatever it is will be at the deepest part of the well. He decides if there truly is a greater force than the Goblin Lord, then he has a duty to defeat it and protect the village. Shia marvels at his will, but advises the enemy is not someone that can be defeated by sheer willpower. The enemy is the Vampire Lord. Shia tells him the backstory of how her tribe has been working as vampire hunters for generations. Unfortunately, a few days ago, in a battle with the vampires, there was a vampire whom her father inflicted a serious injury on but failed to kill. That particular vampire was the Vampire Lord, and the vampire hunters have been able to track out the Vampire Lord's hideout. Locke expresses his doubt that she will be able to take on the Vampire Lord, since she was having such trouble with the Goblin Lord. Shia stubbornly states that she has a duty as the daughter of the tribe chief to clear away her tribe's dishonor. Locke asks if that honor prevents the idea of working together to defeat the Vampire Lord. Shia replies with a negative. Locke then offers her a sword as she doesn't have one anymore. The sword he offers her is his, which leaves him without a weapon. He then clarifies that he's strong even with his bare hands. Shia interprets Locke's gesture as an indirect way of saying she should defeat the Vampire Lord herself. In truth, that's what she was hoping for. They go down the steps and are faced by many goblins, which Locke single-handedly defeats. This leads Shia to conclude that Locke is very powerful. They continue down the rabbit hole until they're in the same space with the Vampire Lord. Shia expresses how she plans to defeat him with her own hands. The Vampire Lord recalls how her father was determined to do the same thing. Heck, an entire force was involved, but they could only inflict injuries. The Vampire Lord expresses that in comparison to her father's greatest efforts, she's very weak. The Vampire Lord continues to ridicule and insult Shia. The scene crescendos as the Vampire Lord states that she's actually made a mistake by bringing Locke, a human, down to his cave. She is from a species that can't be charmed, but humans can. The Vampire Lord plans to charm Locke into a slave. It's all too late. Before Locke can react, the Vampire Lord does his thing, then commands Locke to come towards him. Locke starts walking towards him, and Shia beats herself for not knowing any better. To think that she forgot about the Bloodsucker's charm ability. Locke, no matter how strong, never stood a chance. The Vampire Lord gives Shia an ultimatum: death by him, or death by a charmed Locke. Locke continues to walk toward the Vampire Lord. It looks like he's still very much under the spell and both him and Shia are screwed. Then, the plot twist. Locke punches the Vampire Lord square in the face. The Vampire Lord's charm didn't work because Locke's mental resistance is high. The vampire remains in disbelief. It's Locke's turn to ridicule the Vampire Lord, calling him a lesser vampire under the impression of lordship. The vampire tries to retaliate, but Locke remains quick on his feet. Shia, who is now on the sidelines, notices a magic circle. There's aerial and super speed and sorcery at its best. Locke calls it sorcery vastly different from the pathetic charm of the Vampire Lord, aka Draining Touch. As the vampire's life gets drained away, he demands to know who exactly Locke really is. Locke introduces himself the same as he had done with Shia, and the vampire retorts that he's lying. The Vampire Lord then makes an attempt to escape by turning into multiple bats that would escape, but Shia doesn't let him. She stabs him with Locke's sword and the bats start to turn to ash. The Vampire Lord is defeated and Shia notes power was absorbed by Locke's sword. He waves it off as only her imagination. Locke asks if she will retrieve the vampire's head as the rest of him has disintegrated. Shia instead retrieves the vampire's medallion. Inwardly, Locke analyzes that such medallions didn't exist a decade ago. Cursed medallion, an item that special vampire lords bury within their bodies. As they suck people's blood and take their lives, curses are amassed in the medallion. The head of the Vampire Lord speaks, saying peace won't reign because he's been defeated. The medallion has the power to open the door to the interdimensional rift, and as long as the door is open, countless Majins will overrun the world. Gods will also descend from the opposite dimension, gods of the dark beings. The head also says they will continue to live in extreme fear until the worst happens. It's only a matter of time before vampires from around will come after them, after the medallion, because it's like a magnet. Locke uses the sword to strike the medallion, breaking it in two. The sword then begins to suck in all the dark energy which the head identifies as the curses. When every last one of the curses is sucked up, Locke asks if any Majins will still come through, even if the dimension door is opened. The head then realizes Locke is holding the Great Majin sword, which means he's the Great Sorcerer. Oops. Guess Shia now knows his secret, which he asks to be kept. Shia and Locke return to the Adventurer Guild, holding a few too many magic stones from their goblin extermination adventure. Jeannie explains it was a much larger horde than they initially expected, but they had the help of Shia, a B-rank adventurer. After Shia and Locke initially defeated the Vampire Lord, they reunited with Ario and Jeannie. They were truthful to the siblings about running into the Vampire Lord, depicting Shia as the true hero who defeated him. They, however, kept Locke's true identity hidden, simply depicting him as an extraordinary adventurer who had circumstances. They decided the information about the Vampire Lord was sensitive data that upper management needed to handle instead of the guild, and Shia was put in charge of informing the said management as a B-rank adventurer. Shia meets up with the rest after reporting to the management. She tells them the guild will be involved in the action against the Vampire Lord, and she gave them half the medallion. Was that really a good idea, Shia? Shia reminds that she still has the other half she can use as proof of clearing her tribe's dishonor. It also serves as evidence they will need when the time comes for them to explain things. Locke decides to let things be, and in the meantime, it's a drink and toast of celebration. After drinks, the siblings approach Luck's statue and kneel before it. They encourage Locke to do the same. They believe it was Luck who provided divine protection that saw them through the mission, and to that, they've come back to show gratitude. Shia also acknowledges Luck must have had a hand in their success, and Locke just stays on the sidelines watching the madness. The siblings soon bid their farewells to Shia and Locke, hoping to meet them again at the guild. This leaves Shia and Locke to assure that truly Luck was on their side, just in different ways. Locke asks if Shia can get to her tribe to share in detail the intel they've gathered from the vampires with him. If the vampires' goal is to force open the interdimensional door to summon dark gods, the Beast Folk tribe should consider that the vampires aren't a problem for just them. Locke doesn't plan to let the peace that has been upheld for 10 years to be destroyed. Shia is momentarily zoned out, still not over the striking resemblance she now sees between Locke's statue and Luck himself. Locke continues to counter any such resemblance. Shia then basically expresses how lucky she is to be working with someone so legendary, and promises she'll return quickly to her village and come back with the information Locke needs. She goes off and Locke decides that he'll need to report back to Golan. The Adventure Guild is a large organization. The larger the organization, the more time it takes for a decision to be made. If Locke doesn't do it first, it would take time for the news about the Vampire Lord to organically reach Golan. The appearance of the Vampire Lord isn't important, but the vampire's goals are the real threat. If they respond too little too late, they are bound to regret it. Chances are Shia felt uneasy with the guild's response, hence why she entrusted the medallion to Locke. Locke returns to Golan's place and it turns out Golan has been worried sick because it's been days. Talk about a typical father that Locke doesn't remember asking for. Locke presents the other half of the medallion and Golan wants it examined with a special machine. He also states that he will be in contact with Shia. Celerise, Golan's daughter, steps into the room and gives a cold shoulder. Locke initially thinks it's directed at him, but Golan explains that he might be an overprotective father. Celerise wants to be an adventurer and Golan isn't having it. He will ultimately discuss it with his wife who is on a business trip in a neighboring country. Locke watches Celerise train from the window. She has a form similar to Golan and certainly has talent. She catches him staring and he has to turn away. Later on, while Locke is having lunch, Celerise steps into the room and immediately gives him a cold shoulder upon seeing him. She points a finger straight at him and questions if he is her father's bastard child. At least it explains what her issue is with him. She breaks down her suspicion to her father waiting for their mother to be out on a trip before receiving his bastard child he was rather pleased to meet. There's also the fact that her father was worried sick when Locke was missing for days. All analysis points to her conclusion, which makes her begin to tear up. Locke is challenged with telling the truth, as letting Celerise's assumptions run wild could lead to a disaster, causing a crack in the Golan family. He speaks up, but she isn't about to believe Locke is actually her father's comrade who is a 40-year-old in a kid's form. She continues to insist they must be siblings, even when Locke pulls out his Adventurer's Guild card. They might not bear the same last name, but this could easily be because her father never claimed Locke. She decides she's Locke's big sister and starts to warm up to him. She knows her mother would be cross though, and Locke fears the same. This is the sort of narrative that could absolutely tear the Golan family apart. Locke takes his chances and reveals his true identity to Celerise. He explains that he returned 10 days ago from the interdimensional rift. His explanation, however, leads her to believe that the great sorcerer is her father's son, and her little brother, as Locke does have a resemblance to Golan. To think her imagination couldn't get any wilder. Locke starts to see why Golan is against Celerise becoming an adventurer, although a strong imagination also implies a strong will. Locke then presents Celerise with a proposal. He asks her to do a simple guild quest with him, as she has already registered as an F-rank adventurer against Golan's wishes. While on their quest, Locke asks why she has chosen to become an adventurer. She reveals she was told adventure stories from her father instead of being sung lullabies. Fascinating stories, more so than a picture book. She wants to go on adventures like her father did. Her dream is to be just as strong. This causes Locke to reveal that many adventurers have died trying to reach Golan's level of power. Extraordinary talent and devotion and the godly fortune bestowed upon the trio of then is what saw them through their adventures. Locke continues to advise Celerise to take it one step at a time. No shortcuts, but to pick quests best suited for her and gradually improve with those. It's the best strategy if she really wants to become just like her father. Locke knows that there are flaws to his advice. Adventurers take up suitable quests all the time and still end up killed because the guild miscalculates, like in the goblin situation. Ario and Jeannie would be dead meat if Locke and Shia hadn't shown up when they did. Locke then takes it upon himself to show Celerise techniques and skills, in order to prevent herself from losing her life even in the face of miscalculations. They take a closer look at their quest. Villagers reported sightings of rabid beasts, but there have been no human casualties yet. If the spottings are true, then their current quest is unsuitable for E-rankers. It's a puzzling situation. A group of magic beasts that don't exist have been spotted, but don't seem to have harmed any humans. This could only mean one thing: illusion magic. They go over to where the sightings were reported and confirm it truly is illusion magic. Locke advises Celerise to not feel overwhelmed by the weight of it and just go for it. Celerise goes in with her sword, able to strike at the same time the dragon reaches out a claw. She hits it square on the claw, and Locke watches from the sideline with an intrigued smile. Her strength as a fighter is certainly incredible, even without bias for her relation to Golan. Her strength is proportionate to a B-rank adventurer, someone like Shia. There is cause for fright, though. The illusion of the dragon is quite strong illusion magic. It's a mass of magical powers. The more Celerise is able to make contact with it with her sword, the more of an interaction. And the more of an interaction, the more likely for even the illusion dragon to possess a mind of its own. The dragon starts to release a fireball. Locke deems it is the perfect time to first float and then accelerate. His aim is to execute a learning start skill. He makes contact with the dragon's forehead with his hand and starts to learn the illusion magic. His learning is soon complete and he's able to dispel the illusion. Celerise is still under the illusion that she was hit by the fireball, but Locke is able to talk her out of it. Even she realizes she doesn't have any burns. Locke tips her that she was bound to fail using the tactic of attacking illusion magic like it was the real deal. If one can't identify the true source of the sorcerer's magic, it's best to retreat, as illusions could make one hurt themselves if they believe they're under real danger. Sometimes retreating is better than dying. But there's a greater issue. There's a greater sorcerer capable of great illusions, and Locke wants him to step out of his hiding place. Locke speaks out, knowing the sorcerer is somewhere close listening. He addresses the fact that the sorcerer has not harmed any villagers, but would still need to be investigated as he has taken a spot on the Adventure Guild's quest list. The culprit responds from within the woods that he has something to protect. Locke notes how the voice sounds like it belongs to a kid. Locke asks if the thing that needs protecting can't be moved, and the culprit responds that it would be difficult to move. At this rate, without a proper negotiation, Celerise and Locke would have to report back to the guild with a failed quest. This triggers Celerise, as she doesn't know how she would face her father knowing that she failed on her first quest. Locke continues to talk things out with the hidden sorcerer, explaining that even if they can't do anything about them, someone else would get sent out to succeed where him and Celerise have failed. This someone else may very well use brute force to expose the culprit's secret and even subjugate them. Locke is just trying to avoid all of that drama for the young sorcerer's sake. The young sorcerer reveals himself as indeed a demon kid named Lucilla. Locke compliments the kid's abilities, and Celerise questions if demons aren't wicked and dangerous creatures. Locke schools her that it's mostly a misconception with rumors that have run wild for centuries. Locke asks Lucilla about what she was protecting, and she agrees to show them. Lucilla also explains that she is trusting them because she has sensed that Locke is a greater sorcerer than she is. He also didn't forcefully try to expose her. She leads them to an ancient ruins, and notes a Gerberga of her return. Gerberga is a chicken. The minute Locke and Shia mention the obvious, Lucilla gets pissed. Lucilla clarifies Gerberga is a divine cock with the power of a god. It is said that Gerberga's ancestors used its crowing to awaken the world, and is the god his tribe worships. The backstory is that his tribe lived in the mountain range far up north. That is until one day a vampire party suddenly came attacking the village, and Lucilla was the only survivor. The tribe entrusted the divine cock to Lucilla, and she has kept them afloat with illusion magic against the vampire's relentless pursuit. Lucilla and Gerberga sought refuge at the ancient ruins, as there is a barrier set up to repel the vampire family. Locke is, however, able to ascertain the barrier isn't doing anything. He notifies Lucilla about the defeat of the vampire lord and the vampires under him. This still leaves other vampires that could come after dear Gerberga. Lucilla then points out that the chicken has the power to discern the world and its boundaries. It has the ability to intercept any travel with other dimensions, too. The vampire planned to force open the door to the interdimension with the cursed medallion, but their plan could be ruined by the voice of just a single chicken. Locke asks that they return to the royal capital with Gerberga, and has to reveal his true identity to Lucilla, stating the sword in his hand is the Majin sword, which once belonged to the Majin ruler that was defeated by Locke himself. This makes Lucilla trust him enough to protect Gerberga. As they start to leave the ruins, 3 vampires attack them, but thank goodness for Locke. The vampires realize Locke's great strength and demand his identity, but he replies he's not obligated to reveal such to lesser vampires. This aggravates them and they start to strengthen. which is the strategy that Locke was carrying out. This also confirms that, indeed, Lucilla has been protecting the divine cock. Locke executes a magical arrows skill that grounds them. Next, he engulfs them in flames, but one manages to escape. The escapee starts to transform into smaller bats to get away. But just then, Gerberga crows and it's game over. The vampires turn to ash. Apparently, metamorphosis is not allowed to exist in the eyes of the cock's power. That is why it forcefully drew a boundary the minute the vampires transformed. The power is, however, limited to when vampires transform. But it doesn't mean Gerberga is any less awesome. They return to the capital where Shia is waiting for Locke with news for only his ears. He steps away from his new companions to hear her out. There's a little hold on giving Locke information as Shia introduces herself to Locke's new adventure companions. When Locke informs them that Shia helped him to subjugate vampires a while back, Celerise and the demon Lucilla stare at Shia in awe and respect. Especially Lucilla, as it would mean that it's thanks to Shia that she was able to protect the divine cock Gerberga-sama from most of the vampire forces. Shia is the reason that the vampire forces pursuing and attacking them have reduced. Celerise, on the other hand, is a bit proud and jealous. So she introduces herself as Locke's apprentice, even though Locke and herself never agreed of any such thing. A competitive and tense atmosphere between Celerise and Shia ensues, and Locke senses it, so he asks Shia to speak with him in his room. And when Celerise makes her way to follow them, he stops her from entering the room. Before they got into any real talk, Locke asks how Shia could get to the royal capital so fast, and she explains that the Beastfolk village is close to the royal capital. Now back to business, Shia informs Locke that she needs his help to do something, and before saying what she wanted, Locke agrees to help. Shia explains that the vampire lords are planning something huge, and the one at the head of this scheme is a vampire high lord. The vampire high lord, a ruler amongst rulers that governs the vampire lords, a monster who wields power to match even the Majin. Even for Locke, facing a vampire high lord is quite the feat and would require a lot. According to Shia, her tribe, the Lycan tribe, is combining all its efforts to identify and put a stop to the vampires' scheming, but it would be troublesome to make a move on the vampire high lord. A key member of their vanguard, her father, has not fully recovered. This is where Shia needs Locke's help, as brute force against the vampire high lord is the only way the Beastfolk can see the plans of the vampires to an end. Still, to put an end to the scheme, there is something Shia and the Lycan tribe need to find first. The vampires are frantically looking for a chicken, and the Lycan tribe wants to find it before the vampires do. Shia apologizes for sounding nuts or wasting Locke's time, as she also doesn't believe that they could be looking for just a chicken, though she tries her best to convince Locke to take it seriously, as the chicken could close or create the dimensional space by the sound of its voice. Meanwhile, Locke knows that what she's saying is true and is referring to Gerberga-sama, which he met coincidentally on the quest with Celerise. After Shia's ranting, Locke is able to inform her that he knows about the chicken, and as he opens the door, an eavesdropping Celerise enters the room, face first, with Lucilla and the revered chicken standing behind her. Celerise apologizes for eavesdropping, and the divine cock, Gerberga-sama, is introduced to Shia as the chicken the tribe and the vampires are looking for. Shia is shocked that he already found the chicken, but Locke explains that meeting Lucilla and Gerberga-sama was just a coincidence on the quest with Celerise. Since they've now gotten a hold on the divine cock, the next phase of the plan is the subjugation of the vampire high lord. Locke asks if Shia has determined the location of the high lord, and she informs him that the tribe only knows an approximate location. Just in time, Golan walks into the estate and meets the crew in the house. Golan is thrilled to see Locke home safe and sound. Golan also appreciates Locke for keeping his eyes on Celerise on her first adventure quest. Suddenly, Celerise walks into the room crying and apologizing for giving Golan the cold treatment. Golan asks if it's because he held her back from joining the Adventurer Guild. Celerise explains that it was because she assumed that Locke was the illegitimate son of her father. Golan assures her that there's no way he would have an illicit son, to which she quickly agrees to, and Celerise apologizes again for jumping to conclusions. When Golan asks if she gave Locke a hard time because of the misunderstanding, she escapes the question by leaving to go get the others. Golan apologizes for any trouble that Celerise has put him through because of the misunderstanding. He then proceeds to overreact like an overprotective father would, saying at the rate she's going, she might be deceived by some evil man. Locke calms Golan down to assure him that he would look after Celerise. Golan is so glad and hugs Locke, thanking him. At this point, Celerise walks into the room and reads a wrong interpretation of their positions, thinking they were secret lovers. She runs away asking them to take their time, while the two pursue her trying to clear up the new misunderstanding. After a while, they explain their circumstance, and get back to the elephant in the room. Golan, from all that he has heard, realizes that it is not at a level of a mere nuisance. While thinking of what to do next, Shia adds a new piece of vital information. If a High Lord sucks on the blood of the divine cock, a curse will build up, and an interdimensional gate will open. Lucilla explains further that curses come from the desecration of life, and the more holy the being is, the more the curses. Killing gods is at the top of the hierarchy of building curses. Since they can't bring Gerberga-sama with them, Golan came up with the beautiful idea to have it secured in the royal palace and guarded by the royal family. They go to meet the king and friend Eric, who welcomes them warmly and gets his two daughters, huge fans of the stories of Locke's adventures. And they get to meet Locke himself, the sorcerer and now Archduke. Here, Locke gets to see how much of a reputation he has in the kingdom, as every child grew up with his adventure tales and aspired to be like him. After all introductions have been made, Golan asks his daughter to go play with the king's daughters and watch over Gerberga-sama, while the grown-ups talk about the plan against the vampires. The seemingly close trio of daughters were led into a different room by a rather suspicious-looking maidservant. Eric apologizes for bringing his kids to their important discussion, and they get right into it. Eric agrees to take the divine cock into his protection, and asks Locke what he plans to do. Locke thinks for a split second and tells them he will charge at the High Lord with Shia and the Lycan tribe. It isn't a concrete strategy, so Locke explains that he would draw the masses away from the High Lord, creating an opportunity for the beast folk to launch an attack. Golan feels the strategy would stand a chance of working if the roles were reversed. Due to the fact that it is only Locke who can finish off the High Lord, they agree that he launches the attack. Golan realizes that this would mean a lot of casualties for the beast folk, as he could not contribute reinforcements from the guild. The vampires can control humans, so it would be counterproductive to have human adventurers join the fight. Golan asks if Shia is sure about going through with the plan. Shia reestablishes her determination by saying that it is better than letting a High Lord get away. While all this was happening, the suspicious-looking maidservant had locked and tied the knobs of the door to the room with the princesses, Celerise, and Gerberga. The princesses try to open the door, and Celerise suspects something is off. She asks them to get behind her, and almost immediately, 3 Lich Kings appear. Lich Kings are wizards or priests who were high-ranking when they were alive, and ended up becoming undead out of the desire for everlasting life. They are the kings of immortality, highly intelligent and capable of using magic. Even though there was little Celerise could do to protect the princesses and fend off the Lich Kings, she stood her ground, determined to protect the princesses to the very end. The 3 Lich Kings attack ferociously with fireballs and hundreds of arrows, doing damage to the room and alerting the guards. Locke enters just in time to protect Celerise and the princesses, praising her for living up to the title, his apprentice. Locke assures them that he will handle the Lich Kings from there on. Skillfully and in one shot, he traps the 3 Lich Kings in a sphere that will ultimately turn into an extremely high-pressure, high-temperature, and high-density hell, which would lead the Lich Kings burning to dust. This left Celerise in utmost awe, as in the blink of an eye, 3 Lich Kings were obliterated by just one spell, Implosion. She sees the true power of the legendary sage, Luck Franzen. Luckily, Locke spots the ringleaders of the attack on the palace, lesser vampires who wonder what happened to the Lich Kings. Locke sees this as a beautiful opportunity, and using Lucilla's illusion spell that he had learned, he changed into the higher vampire they recognized as the 8th. He uses this to interrogate them, and they inform him that they are subordinates and under the order of 6th. The lower the number, the higher the power the vampire possesses. Therefore, there is someone higher than the form he took, the 8th. Locke asks them why they entered the palace and what their mission is. The lesser vampires inform him that their mission is to capture the chicken god. Shocked by this, he decides to be cunning, and acts like the 8th was ordered to capture the chicken god as well by the High Lord. The lesser vampires bought the act and apologized, thinking there had been a misunderstanding. They even gave him a teleportation magic circle that could get him to the 6th, so the confusion can be resolved. Successful at getting all he needed, with Golan's help he takes the lesser vampires out and returns the daughters to their fathers safely. They discover how the lesser vampires got into the castle even when it is guarded with magic. It was through an already finished teleportation magic circle, which is a tray that the suspicious maid Rowana brought there with treats inside of it. Celerise and Shia make their way to seize the maid, while Locke requests that Golan guards the chicken god. Locke goes through the teleportation circle with the goal of finding the so-called 6th and killing him. He lands in a different environment through the tray and, soon enough, encounters another vampire asking who Locke is. Still using the illusion magic, he intimidates the vampire he encountered. When he turns, the vampire recognizes him as the 8th, and asks that he heard that the 8th was annihilated by the beast folk. Locke pushes further with the intimidation, asking if the lesser vampire has a death wish. When the lesser vampire asks why 8th has teleported there, Locke lies, saying he has a message for the 6th from the vampire High Lord. The lesser vampire leads the way for him with glee. Upon asking, Locke gets to know that the location is a fortress that the Sixths ordered the villagers to build. The lesser vampire continues, saying how good of a labor force the humans make, and the ones that could not build made good food. With this, Locke could not control his resentment, and in one strike put an end to the vampire. With that same rage, he makes his way to the Sixths, slaughtering every vampire greater or lesser that gets in his way. The Sixth kills the rest in an engulfing shot and faces Locke, surprising and betraying his subordinates. The Sixths and Locke exchange swords, and Locke lands a few damaging strikes on the Sixths, thanks to the sword. The Sixths notices the sword and tries to get it from him, but Locke severs the Sixth's arm and regains his swords from the falling forearms in a cool fashion. This leaves the Sixths in awe and wondering who Locke is. Locke introduces himself, and the Sixths realizes that their attack did not go successfully, given the speed of Locke's counterattack. Curious, Locke asks him how he got his underlings into the royal palace, but when the Sixth shows no sign of disclosing information, Locke kills him off. Before the Sixth dies off, he warns Locke to enjoy the life he has now. When the time comes, the High Lord will bring chaos and pain into their healthy and peaceful lives. As the vampire died, the medallion breaks into halves, letting out the curses and wailings of numerous beings that the Sixths had killed. The sword absorbs all those wailings, which makes Locke more determined to put an end to the plotting of the vampire High Lord. Soon enough, Locke is ambushed by a horde of vampires, through which he angrily cut through to get to the exit of the fort. Then, Locke realizes something sad. The humans that have been subordinated from getting their blood sucked cannot be saved, as they simply turn to ash once they lose their governing lord. He realizes that there is not a single living soul in the entire town that could be saved. On getting back to the royal palace, which right now has her defenses at peak level, he is welcomed by the king and the guildmaster, Eric and Golan, at the palace gate. Locke sadly assures them that he has dealt with every vampire he could find there, showing proof, but he adds that unfortunately there were no nearby living villagers to save. Locke blames himself for failing to see the plan earlier, but Golan takes the blame as he is the guildmaster, and Locke has just been back to the world for 10 days. Golan accepts responsibility and assures that the nearby villagers will have a proper burial, as it is the very least that can be done for the dead. As for the maid Roanna, she was just charmed, which implies that it is still possible to heal her out of the control. Hearing this made Locke and Celerise relieved. Thanks to defeating the Sixths, about 5 people turned to ashes and another 30 lost consciousness. Since there are chances for castle labor to become vampire subordinates, the palace isn't a safe place to protect Gerberga-sama. This makes Locke determined to end the High Lord with Gerberga-sama. Seeing that this is the safest option they've got, the two decide to accompany Locke, and the trio make plans to end the High Lord. The adventurer trio is back on a quest, but this time as the king, guildmaster, and a legendary great sage. Celerise asks to join the trio on the adventure, but the overprotective father that she has almost immediately said no. She tried to convince her father that she has gathered enough experience to defeat the lesser vampires at least. Golan refuses her request and adds that if she comes along, she will only be a burden. After her father says this, the disappointed Celerise accepts the decision and does not push anymore. As a way to lighten the atmosphere and save the beautiful father and daughter relationship Golan had with his, Locke suggested that Golan gave one of his longswords to his daughter, since her fighting style is just like his, and she had an abnormal strength like her father as well. He then added that she should use the swords to ensure that the princesses are safe while their father is on the quest. Locke then adds that there might be vampire underlings in the palace. He expects his apprentice to protect the princesses in the castle with no mistake. This satisfied Golan, as his daughter would at least be in the safety of the castle, and at the same time, Locke managed to pacify Celerise as well, since she is eager to prove herself. In reality, she might have been sweet-talked into staying in the palace and defending the princesses by Locke. The truth is, the possible occurrence that Locke made up will happen, and better still, is happening. A horde of flying vampires attack the palace in the bid to take Gerberga-sama, and now Celerise is left to fend them off. Luckily, the vampires underestimate what an F-rank adventurer like Celerise could do. But when the time for action arrived, Celerise delivered, as she tore through them with the similar strength that her father has. The vampires tried to use magic to fight her, but she remembers Locke's advice on how to beat a magician. You make your blade touch him first. She easily takes the 2 vampires who were using magic out, before they can do anything. The vampires that are not exchanging blows with Celerise try to take the chicken from Lucilla, only to realize to their greatest surprise that there was nothing inside of the cage. The cage was an illusion, which Lucilla made to appear as a huge, fiery phoenix. Thanks to Lucilla's illusion, the enemies could not flee, and this would give Celerise the opportunity of finishing all of the vampires off. Meanwhile, the adventuring trio are on their way to the High Lord's hideout, which is just a day away from the royal capital, showing that the High Lord has belittled their ability to make any change or effect to his plans. Though it's going to take a lot to find the High Lord's location on the mountain belt they're now at. Out of the blue, a beast man appears to inform them that by decree of the Beast Queen, the location has been uncovered. He further adds that the numbers of the vampires are plenty, and the strength the beast folk have will not be enough to launch an effective attack. Nonetheless, they could lure most of the vampires, even putting the pride and name of the Lycan tribe on the line. They ready their valor and enter for battle. Locke hands the sword he collected from the Sixth to Shia, since it is an awesome sword that held its own against the Majin ruler that Locke has. Right now, everyone else had special swords. Locke has the Majin ruler's sword, Golan has a magical sword of fire. If she were to face the High Lord with the sword she has, it would be unreliable. He saw through Shia's enthusiasm and gave her the sword. Locke also checked if the curses on the sword were of danger with his appraisal skill. When they got to the hideout, they meet a scanty entrance, which meant that the beast folk had successfully lured the majority of the vampires away. The crew still find it hard to locate the hideout's entrance. A concealment magic had already been cast on the entrance to hide it from them. Shia undoes the magic, revealing the entrance to the hideout. The crew get inside the hideout and find a few vampires waiting. Locke has an ability to put lesser vampires to sleep, his sleep cloud magic. Hearing that just the higher-ups in the vampire family could resist such a skill, it was just the nobles and the arches that withstand the magic. Golan charges at the vampires with no intent of holding back. He cuts them up in one fell swoop. Cowardly vampires hide in the walls of the hideout, waiting to ambush him with a rain of magic arrows, since they have seen their enemy's ability, a warrior. Little did they know that Golan the warrior is a man of brute force as he cuts them in half, not excluding the walls where they were hiding in. As usual, the other two just watched him do his thing, charging with heavy attacks, while Shia watched in awe. The cutting-edge captain of the legendary hero adventure party. Since they drew close to the evil that lurks within, they get more alert and proceed to conquer. They get into a weirdly walled part of the cave where they meet a luscious female vampire, standing in their path to the High Lord. She sarcastically yet politely asked them to leave the cave and die while they were at it, underestimating their power to fight her. They retort, telling her a mere lord could not stop them. She shows them an already split cursed medallion that she has been permitted by the High Lord to use. Next, she makes her pet monster's presence known. Apparently they had entered its nest and she has no plans of letting them leave or remain alive. The ancient dragon zombie attacks the trio, and they all get a bad feeling about this encounter. The dragon zombie sends a gust of poison breath at them, and they try to defend themselves against the heavy attacks. Since this is a tough encounter, they tell Locke to go on ahead without them, just like he did those 10 years ago. They have waited for the opportunity to repay their debts to him and say those words, "Leave this to us, and head on first." Locke heeds their request and charges towards the High Lord. This distracts the female vampire from the rest, creating a chance for Golan to strike. Unfortunately, this doesn't make a difference, as the female vampire did not use the Cursed Medallion's power for only the zombie ancient dragon, but for herself as well. So the strike did little to no damage to the vampire. She strengthens herself, and the king and warrior are left to face off against a strengthened female vampire lord. Meanwhile, the queen is present at the cathedral. She instructs that all holy people present there should join her in strengthening the barrier around the High Lord's location, as she knows that the barrier will greatly limit the High Lord's movements and increase their chances of winning. Together, everyone present at the cathedral prays for God's divine protection. Since they can't fight at the battlefront, this is their way of aiding the victory against the High Lord. At the nearby forest surrounding the High Lord's location, the battle is intensifying, and it looks like the vampire forces of the High Lord have the upper hand at the moment. Most of the vampires present in the forest are lords, so they are much more difficult to deal with than the rest. As a result, the attackers decide to retreat. However, the retreat is just a part of their brilliant strategy, as they intend to lure the vampires into a hot chase. The vampires seem to buy the bait as they get ready to chase down the people, but one of the lords can see through their plan. He informs his comrades of the people's likely strategy to create space for a detached force to assault the High Lord. According to this lord, there's a chance that the detached force has already made its way to the High Lord's castle. He smiles and applauds the brilliant strategy of his adversaries. However, he remains unbothered, as he knows that the detached force just condemned themselves to death at the hands of the High Lord. After all, the High Lord's power is too great to be bothered by a group of weak humans. Just as predicted, Locke and Shia make their way to the High Lord's castle to face off against the High Lord himself. Everyone has done their part. Now Locke and his companion must finish off the work. They go straight to the High Lord's location and meet him sitting, as if to say he's been expecting them. The High Lord smiles and boasts about teaching them a lesson. They can feel his malevolence, and can tell that it's much more superior to others. Locke reveals to Shia that the High Lord has an offensive barrier up. She nervously nods to signal that she understands. Shia observes that Locke doesn't appear too bothered by the High Lord. Behind the High Lord, there's a cage that makes them curious. The cage is a little too far away, so they can't see what's inside. The High Lord takes advantage of this distraction to attack Locke. Fortunately, Locke easily blocks his attack, leaving Shia in awe of both of their powers, as she can barely keep up with their moves. The High Lord commends Locke's reaction speed, saying it's impressive for a human. When he finds out that charm doesn't work on Locke, he's particularly intrigued, and seeks to know the name of his adversary. Locke refuses to give out his name, and they say the High Lord is the one with barriers. Locke takes out his blade to attack the High Lord, and while he manages to evade the blade attacks, Shia realizes that he might be oblivious to her attacks. So Shia comes in and attacks from the High Lord's blind side. Unfortunately for her, he easily evades the attack and turns to face her. Locke takes this opportunity to swing his blade at the High Lord's arm, effectively taking his left arm away. This increases their confidence. The High Lord ensures that their confidence is to be short-lived by growing a new arm. He says that their blade won't work on him, but Locke realizes that the problem is his excess supply of mana that's difficult to absorb in just one hit. He steadies himself for another attack. Meanwhile, King Eric and Golan are still facing tough battles outside. The battle takes a new turn when King Eric asks Golan to take care of the dragon zombie. The vampire laughs at Golan, thinking Eric has ditched his comrade. But Eric has only put his comrade in the battle that suits him better. Eric uses levitation to chase after the vampire. Unknown to him, the vampire he's chasing is a decoy, and just a brilliant cloning move. The real vampire holds Eric from behind and buries her teeth in his neck, intending to turn King Eric into a vampire and her manservant. Unfortunately, the bite fails and Eric remains unchanged. He reveals that he's already married and can't be turned by her. He also reveals that the hero's blood has high poison and mental resistance, which is perfect for getting rid of witches. She tries to attack them again with magic, but her powers don't seem as powerful as before. The barrier created by those in the cathedral is now in effect, and the people suddenly have the upper hand against the vampires. Eric finishes the vampire witch off first, but she first warns that they will never win against the High Lord. Golan also finishes his opponent off, but he faces some difficulty trying to move his weak hips around. The battle against the vampire witch is now won. King Eric teases Golan by calling him an old man, while Golan responds by teasing him about flirting with the vampire witch while married to Queen Levi. Meanwhile, back at the High Lord's castle, Locke and Shia are still engaged in a fierce battle against him. At this point, they notice that his movements have slowed down, so Locke says that the time to attack the High Lord has finally come. He uses a draining touch skill on the High Lord, which weakens him even further. The High Lord starts to retreat, so he calls out the Divine Cock. The presence of the Divine Cock changes the whole shape of the battle, and the previously retreating High Lord seems eager to fight now. Locke tells the High Lord that there's no point in delaying his inevitable defeat, but he becomes less confident when the High Lord reveals his cursed medallion. The High Lord says it's unwise to bring the Divine Cock to a battle, and calls it a sacrifice for the gods. Once he activates the cursed medallion, he uses it to erect a powerful anti-barrier as a counter to the barrier erected by Queen Levi and the others at the cathedral. With the anti-barrier, the High Lord has the upper hand again, and he now intends to feast on the blood of the Divine Cock. The anti-barrier completely restricts their movements and forces them down onto the ground. The High Lord reveals that he activated the divine protection of the gods of the dark. He grins and explains that the strong force Locke and Shia are getting hit by is their god's divine protection. This protection stops lords, high lords, and arches from taking any action in the royal capital, keeping the people safe. However, with the activation of the divine protection of the gods of the dark, Locke, Shia, and everyone around is restrained from moving as much as they are loved by their god. Meanwhile, back at the Grand Cathedral, Queen Levi seeks to restore the supportive barrier that is now destroyed. The others advise the Queen not to proceed with the barrier as it might negatively affect the royal capital's barrier. Queen Levi doesn't intend to stop trying to construct the barrier. She reminds the others of the sacrifice that King Eric and his comrades are currently making against the High Lord. The least they can do is provide God's divine protection for them. The Queen's words inspire the people who are now ready to join in the formation of the barrier. The Archpriest, while talking to himself, reveals that Queen Levi is the true form of Levi Ardennes. Locke activates a dual barrier, and then uses the marionette skill as a last resort. With this skill, even though his muscles feel like they're being torn apart, he can still move his body a bit more freely than moments ago. He struggles to get up and walks towards his target, the crystal core, the source of the anti-barrier. The High Lord sees through Locke's plan and moves to stop him. Xia anticipates this move and strikes the High Lord with her blade. It's enough to slow him down but not completely stop him, and he eventually triumphs in his mini-battle against Xia. Locke is now one step away from the crystal core and moves to take it. The High Lord immediately catches the swing of his blade, stopping him from destroying the crystal. The High Lord moves to attack him, but Xia is up again at this point, and moves to help Locke in his fight. The High Lord laughs at their futile attempt to stop him. While they struggle to move freely in the barrier, the dark beings have amplified powers there. Locke urges the High Lord to look at his hand. The High Lord realizes that his anti-barrier is getting weaker. This must be because a holy barrier is being formed somewhere. The High Lord is bewildered at their audacity to form a holy barrier in there. Locke knows that he must make good use of this opportunity, so he goes in and delivers multiple blows to the High Lord with his blade. Locke notices Queen Levi's presence, and can tell that she formed the holy barrier that helped them. Before the High Lord disappears into thin air, he promises to remember Locke and Xia's actions. Locke brings out the divine cock, Gerberga, and lets the cock crow as a signal of their victory. Xia informs Locke that she noticed the presence of a woman in the room. Locke reveals that it was Queen Levi. Queen Levi also feels the defeat of the High Lord and announces it at the cathedral. They all rejoice at the news. A little while later, King Eric and Golan come in to see that the High Lord is already defeated. They ask about the pressure they feel, and Locke tells them everything about the High Lord's anti-barrier. From their conversation, Locke realizes that the people who weren't so close to the barrier could still move. This indicates that the anti-barrier effect has a short range. Locke checks to make certain that Xia is alright. She reveals that she only sustained small scratches after Locke protected her vital body parts with magic. Locke apologizes for not fully protecting her, but she insists that she should apologize for needing protection at all. Locke points out that they owe their victory to the goddess's divine protection. He asks King Eric to express his gratitude to Queen Levi. Locke thinks about the decade he spent in the interdimensional rift, and how he got accustomed to fighting on his own. However, he admits that having comrades who have your back is a nice feeling. Now that the battle is over, Locke and Xia turn their attention to the cage that initially got their attention. It looks like a sleeping wolf is inside the cage, but it can easily be awakened once the sleeping cloud is removed. On closer inspection, Xia reveals that the wolf in the cage is a wolf cub and a sacred beast. She reveals that the sacred wolves have existed since the mythical days and share a common ancestor with the Lycan tribe, sharing mutual respect. Even though the sacred beast doesn't have special powers according to her, it's smart, understands the common language, and doesn't attack people. Locke dispels the sleeping cloud and opens up the cage. The wolf rushes out as if to attack Locke. Xia intervenes by explaining to the wolf how Locke saved it after defeating the vampires. The wolf, after hearing this, prostrates in front of Locke. Locke sees that the wolf is immune to the vampire's charm and subordination. He concludes that the wolf must have been captured to research Xia's beastfolk tribe. Locke tells the wolf that it's free to go, asking it not to attack anyone on the way out. King Eric, Locke, and the other comrades come out to meet shouts of rejoicing from the people. The High Lord and the vampires have been defeated, so it's time for everyone to join in the celebration. A little while later, Locke and his companions make their way back to the royal capital on horses. After traveling for some time, they discover that the wolf hasn't stopped following them since. Xia suggests that the wolf feels indebted to Locke for saving its life. Locke tells the wolf to do whatever it wants with its freedom, but the sacred beast does not stop following them. Xia suggests that the wolf wants to make use of that freedom by following Locke. When Locke asks whether it wants to follow him, the beast excitedly howls. Locke has no objection, and declares that the wolf is now a part of his family. Sometime later, they arrive at the royal capital and are welcomed by Eric's children. They tell him stories about how Celerise and Lucilla protected them while he was gone. Locke notices a lot of vampire stones on the ground, and the children reveal that they were attacked by as many as 20 vampires and defeated 15 of them. Locke notices a peculiar stone belonging to an arch-vampire. Celerise reveals that she defeated the vampire before it used the Strengthen skill, so they never had any problems. King Eric commends their work in keeping the children safe. However, he's also concerned about the arch-vampire's newfound ability to break through the royal capital's barriers. He decides that new security measures must be put into place. Locke suggests that the king should assign the beastfolk to protect the castle. They are immune to charm and subordination from the vampires, and they've become more united after the last battle. King Eric promises to think about the proposal. He also asks if Locke wants anything as a reward for his last heroics in battle. At first, Locke can't think of anything he needs, but he eventually realizes that his family is growing bigger, So Locke tells King Eric that he wants a home for his family. The markets of the royal capital are busy as usual. A little girl desperately walks through the market. She looks very hungry, and she ends up plucking some unripe fruits off a tree. Unfortunately, some men spot and chase after her. She barely escapes them and runs into the sewers. Meanwhile, Locke is finally presented with his home, which he insists is a little too big for him. The others insist that his current level should be that of an archduke, so the house isn't too big. When he complains about the cleaning stress, they advise him to take some apprentices like the other nobles. Apprentices are like children who have no right to inherit assets. In exchange for raising them, they help out with the housework. Locke considers the explanation and decides to take some apprentices. His first apprentice is Lucilla, who is honored to belong to Locke's family. Shia also offers to be an apprentice and help with the cleaning. Later on, Locke explores the house with his wolf, Garb. He compliments lots of things, but he also points out that there are lots of vacant houses like this close to the royal palace. The registers say that they were the property of previous barons without heirs. He wonders why the royal family assumed control of the houses. Locke also admits that he likes the scout tower and wishes to make it his room. Later that night, Lucilla wakes Locke up from sleep and reveals that she's been hearing strange noises coming from the house. She describes it as a ghost's voice, making Locke question why Eric would give him such a house. Locke walks with Lucilla to the cellar where the sound is coming from. He hears the voices and asks Lucilla to light the place up. They see a little girl hanging from the ceiling and crying about pain. At first, they think she's a ghost, but the constant pleas from the little girl make them realize that they're wrong. Locke pulls the girl down and Lucilla calls her a burglar, asking Locke to immediately report her to the authorities. The little girl introduces herself as Milka and thanks Locke for saving her. According to her, she stayed in the castle because she thought it was empty. She reveals that she lost her parents a long time ago, and while she was raised by her grandfather, he also passed on a bit ago. According to her, her grandfather's home was seized after his death due to debts owed. Milka says she's lived in the sewers until recently, when one of the walls collapsed. She followed the walls and found out that it led to Locke's home, which unexpectedly had a trap and captured her. Locke is fascinated by the thought of the place being connected to the sewers. He decides to check it out, wondering where else it leads to. He also says that they must seal the hole that leads to the sewers. Milka shows them the collapsed wall, which looks like it collapsed due to lack of maintenance. Locke decides to patch it up for now. However, he's still curious about where the underground passage leads, especially as he can hear the sounds of the wind from there. Locke uses the hardening and permanence skill to patch the hole up, intending to fill in the cracks by buying proper stones the next day. Milka asks Locke to let her stay in the sewers as she has nowhere else to go. Locke isn't too comfortable with it, but he intends to decide after seeing where the passage leads. Milka stays in front of the group, but Locke brings her back. According to her, she expects Locke to be like the other nobles and use her as a shield. Locke reveals he's a veteran adventurer, so he has no need for that. After going on for a while, they approach what appears to be a dead end. Locke, however, can tell that it's a barrier blocked by a powerful spell, specifically the type that might be used for the royal palace's treasury. This intrigues Locke even more, as he wonders why such powerful magic is used there. Locke uses Analyze, Trace, and Dispel to easily clear the 6-layered magic block, leaving Lucilla in awe. Another wall emerges after they clear the magical block, but it's an ordinary wall this time. Locke easily takes down the wall with one blow. He hears a voice on the other side, and the person there turns out to be Queen Levi. So the sewers directly lead to the royal palace after all. Locke informs the queen about the connection from the sewers to the royal palace. From her surprise, it's clear that she's not aware of this connection. He also thanks her for her help during the battle against the High Lord. And then he asks why she's loitering around at such a late hour, nearly without any clothes on. Queen Levi smiles and says her bedroom is next door, and he spotted her with a lot more clothes than she usually wears by this time. Okay, that's too much information. Locke introduces Lucilla and Milka to Queen Levi. The queen recognizes Lucilla as the one who protected the royal palace a while back. She especially thanks Lucilla for her job well done in protecting the divine cock, encouraging Lucilla to ask for whatever she needs. Queen Levi and Locke agree that it's best nobody ever finds out about the secret passage. The queen also reveals that she intends to inform King Eric about the passage. She welcomes Locke back home and they say their goodbyes, leaving Locke to seal the passage again. On their way back, Milka falls asleep and Locke carries her. Lucilla asks him if he can make Milka the latest addition to their family, pointing out that even her nutrition is poor in the sewers. Locke agrees to talk to Milka about it the next day. Milka wakes up the next day in a strange but large house. She intends to explore the place, but is attacked by the wolf Garb. Locke stops Garb from hurting her and explains that the wolf must have thought she was a burglar. Everyone comes out because of the noise, so Locke uses the opportunity to introduce Milka to everyone as the latest member of the family. That morning, Milka bonds with her new family over a well-prepared breakfast. Later that day, Locke announces that he's going to shop for some cleaning tools and stones. Cellarize and the little Milka go along with him. They split after they learn that the stonemason is different from the hardware store. Locke gives Milka some money and sends her to get cleaning goods. Unfortunately, the men who chased Milka earlier spot her again and follow her into the hardware store. They seize her and refer to her as the brat who ran away. She insists that she has paid up after her grandfather's house was seized, but the men don't intend to let her go. They announce that she must pay the rest of the debt with her body, intending to sell her to slavery. Fortunately for Milka, two passerby adventurers overhear their conversation and step in. After all, King Eric had strictly forbidden human trafficking. The men try to explain that the child owes a debt, and has been discovered to have a huge amount of money with her. Just when the men think they're getting away with it, Milka explains that she has that amount because she was sent on an errand by her master, Locke. Immediately after the adventurers hear that her master is Locke, they conclude that the men trying to take Milka are scoundrels, and the little girl must be protected. Lucky girl, huh? The thugs finally catch on that Ario and Jeannie are onto their tricks, so they switch tactics and resort to taking the girl hostage. They grab Milka roughly, showing no concern for her well-being. In the blink of an eye, Jeannie fires her arrow, pinning one of the thugs to his cart, while Ario conjures a fiery attack. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Locke senses the use of magic and takes off running, with Cellarize following behind. When he reaches the scene, he's astonished to find Ario and Jeannie. The siblings are equally relieved to see him, feeling it's perfect timing. Locke notices the tied-up thugs and asks about them. Ario explains that these thugs were attempting to kidnap Milka. As Milka spots Locke, she becomes emotional, apologizing for not realizing she still owed some debt, and never intending to cause him trouble. Locke seeks more clarification from Ario about the situation, and Ario explains that he believes the men's boss might be considering selling off Milka as a way to settle the debt, a scheme that, no matter how you slice it, is far from decent. Locke gathers the fallen coins scattered on the floor, handing them over to Milka with a warm smile. He reminds her of the home she lost and assures her that there's no need to suffer anymore, promising to handle the rest himself. Cellarize, on the other hand, is absolutely livid at the thugs for subjecting Milka to such a terrible ordeal. She makes a determined vow to turn them over to the authorities. Just as she's about to speak, a group of police officers arrives at the scene, and Cellarize takes it upon herself to explain, even though Ario questions if she's up to the task. Locke takes a moment to introduce Ario to Cellarize, mentioning that she's the daughter of the Guildmaster Golan. This revelation surprises the siblings, as they're aware of her reputation for defeating an arch-vampire shortly after becoming an F-rank adventurer. They also mentioned that Shia received a share of credit for her role in the battle against the High Lord. It's quite clear that Locke is surrounded by an extraordinary group of individuals. After a heated argument with the police, Cellarize returns to give Locke the news. Apparently, the cops have no plans to arrest those troublesome thugs. Locke digs deeper with the officers to confirm this unsettling news. A rather downcast policeman shares the sad truth. Their statement alone isn't enough to make a solid case. Why, you ask? Well, it turns out the boss of these thugs is a major headache. Even if they did nab the thugs, they would likely be back on the streets in no time. The boss in question, Cabino Donovan, isn't your everyday troublemaker. He's a big shot who rules the lower district, and has the police officers wrapped around his influential finger. The plot thickens when they spill the beans on Cabino's ties to the nobles, making it a tough nut to crack for any arrest warrant. Locke isn't ready to throw in the towel just yet, and he quizzes the police about needing concrete evidence. Turns out even solid evidence hasn't worked in the past, thanks to meddling top brass. Cellarize finally grasps that Cabino's web of influence goes deep, extending even to the senior officers. The police confirm this as their reason for not taking more direct action. To make matters worse, Cabino has cooked up a personal army with former adventurers guarding his back. But Locke, being Locke, doesn't seem too fazed. He shrugs off the whole personal army story, leading to a friendly police warning about the 30-strong crew that Cabino has in his corner. Locke's response? No big deal, as long as it's only 30. As they're knee-deep in this intriguing conversation, a mysterious person appears to be eavesdropping on their every word. Later in the day, Locke decides to embark on a little adventure to the Outer Wall District for investigation. This place, well, it's not exactly the prettiest part of town. It's more of a slum, full of unpleasant smells and grime. And it's known for housing its fair share of troublemakers. As Locke snoops around talking to the locals, he uncovers a rather alarming discovery. It turns out that a bunch of kids have been mysteriously vanishing from this area over the past few weeks. The plot thickens when Locke recalls that he was told about Cabino's men aiming to sell off someone named Milka. Connecting the dots, Locke starts suspecting a link between Cabino and the missing children. Meanwhile, at Cabino's warehouse, some rowdy thugs are gambling and drinking. What's really troubling is that there are innocent kids in the room chained up. The plot thickens as one of Cabino's men rushes into his office with the news about their people and the adventurers. Cabino is not happy and questions their motives, especially when an important deal is on the line. The man suggests to Cabino that they send the children away for now, as they have the right number of kids. Cabino then asks about something called the ham, and the man confirms it's ready. Cabino thinks they might outsmart the police, but worries about the Adventurers Guild. He tells his crew to prepare for shipping that night, and sees it as an opportunity for his team to impress and show off their skills to the C-ranked adventurers. Two of his crew members eagerly anticipate getting back at the guild for kicking them out. They also remind Cabino that they were C-ranked when they left the guild, but now they feel they're on par with B-ranked adventurers. Back at the Adventurers Guild, Celerise eagerly asks Locke when he'll take action regarding the Cabino situation. Locke notes her overenthusiasm, but she claims she's determined to seek justice for what they put Milka through. Milka, appreciating Celerise's concern, expresses her desire to keep her safe from danger. Celerise playfully hugs her, assuring her that she can handle it. Jeannie and Aereo also offer their support. Then, Arone approaches Locke with some exciting news. Cabino has been illegally evicting people in the Outer Wall District, and their documents are all fake. Legally, this means that Milka won't have to pay any debt. Milka and the others are overjoyed by this revelation. Locke offers an apology, but she quickly reassures him, saying it's no big deal. She feels indebted for their help with the goblins, and she's also motivated to assist because Cabino has been recruiting ex-adventurers as his underlings. Moreover, she pledges the guild's backing. Just when things are looking up, the police officers they previously spoke to show up, but then express their support for the team. Even an E-rank adventurer from the guild wants to show his support, but his attempt is cut short when Shia arrives and captures Locke's attention. That night, as the thugs were trying to take away the kids in a wagon to sell, one of the kids manages to escape and run off. This leads to a chase by the thugs. Just when they're about to catch the girl, out of nowhere, Locke shows up and punches one of the thugs, saving the kids. The other bad guys then form a protective circle around their leader, Cabino. Locke says he initially came to discuss Milka's situation, but now that he's caught them, he plans to throw them all in jail. Cabino asks Locke who he is, and Locke cheerfully introduces himself as an F-rank adventurer. Cabino feels insulted and orders his gang to attack, but Locke easily defeats them all without even breaking a sweat. The B-rank adventurers now join the fight, and just as they do, Locke's backup arrives. Celerise tells Locke to let them, his disciples, handle the fight, which makes the thugs laugh, assuming that they're also F-rank. The thugs engage Celerise and Shia in battle, but struggle against them, wondering how F-rank adventurers can be so tough. Meanwhile, Garb is casually exploring Cabino's mansion when he stumbles upon something in a chest. Outside the mansion, Shia and Celerise maintain an advantage in the battle, and eventually defeat the thugs. Even Cabino's strongest men can't stand up to them. In a desperate attempt to escape, Cabino tries to run, but Locke intercepts him and sends him flying with a single punch. Garb arrives with the item he found in Cabino's home and hands it over to Locke. As Locke takes it, he senses a strange, cursed feeling from the object. Finally, the officers show up, and when Cabino spots the cursed object in Locke's hand, he gets mad and tries to grab it back, but Locke stops him. The police identified the item as a prohibited ham. It's not a regular piece of ham, it's just called that because it looks similar. This forbidden ham comes from sacred creatures like unicorns and pegasi, and these creatures are sacrificed in a way that's considered sacrilegious to create curses, meant for massive rituals too powerful for humans. Locke figures out that someone is behind all of this. While they talk, a bat eavesdrops on their conversation. The police haul Cabino away and promise to lock him up for good now, as they now have truly solid evidence against him. The girl Locke rescued is curious about his name, and he introduces himself as Locke, an F-rank adventurer. Meanwhile, the bat who was eavesdropping earlier heads to a castle and merges with a strong vampire. This vampire then accesses all of the information the bat collected. A vampire's maid then brings a lady to him, like a dinner offer, and the vampire wastes no time sipping her blood. In a different part of the mansion, a captive woman prays, seeking forgiveness for her sins. In their next meeting, Locke, Eric, and Golan talk about business matters involving a hidden passage connecting the royal palace to Luck's grandfather's mistress's estate. They also discuss Locke defeating Cabino and how Cabino had a forbidden item. When Eric hears about the forbidden item, he gets lost in thought. After Locke brings him back, Eric reveals a secret. He received a report from the royal court's sorcerers and alchemists. It mentioned that the arch-vampire who attacked the palace had a cursed tool that could nullify the holy barrier. It seems similar to the divine protection of the gods of the dark that affected Locke in his battle against the High Lord. Locke believes that using the cursed tool would grant access to not only Arch-class, but Lord-class individuals in the royal capital. Eric wants Locke to lead the investigation, but it's a challenging task that may require noble support, with uncertain odds as well. Golan suggests using Locke's status, but Locke wants to keep his identity concealed. Eric promises to help discreetly, and as they discuss, there's a knock at the door, and Locke goes to investigate. Celerise proudly displays Milka's stylish look to Locke, who is pleasantly surprised. Milka blushes, but Locke assures her that she looks charming. Meeting her for the first time, Golan compliments her look. Locke introduces Golan and Eric to her, and they all seem thrilled to meet her. During breakfast, Locke discusses his ongoing cursed tool investigation with his companions. Shia offers her assistance given her keen sense of smell, which is particularly valuable if vampires are involved. Locke appreciates her offer. When Celerise volunteers to help, Locke smiles nervously, saying it's not needed, which upsets her. Shia steps in, suggesting that Celerise can gather information at the guild. Shia then asks Locke about his plans, and he mentions that he and Lucilla will work on restoring the secret passage. Later, Locke meets up with Golan and Eric. Eric asks Locke to ensure the underground passage remains accessible, just in case they need it in the future. He also mentions that in a worst-case scenario, his family could use it for evacuation. Locke suggests that they get Levi's opinion on the matter since it's connected next to her bedroom. Eric assures Locke that Levi had initially proposed the idea herself, and seemed to have been inspired when Locke visited her that night. Eric suddenly turns to Locke and playfully asks if he spotted Levi running around without any clothes on. Despite Locke's warnings to her, Levi has a spirited personality, and it often leads to amusing situations. Locke, feeling a bit tongue-tied, doesn't quite know how to explain what he witnessed that night. But luckily, Lucilla comes to his rescue by fibbing to Eric, claiming that Levi was fully dressed, and even Gerberga vouches for it. Eric apologizes for suspecting Locke, and Golan joins in, suggesting that Locke should find a special someone too. Later on in the castle, Locke shares some exciting news with Levi and her kids. He's cast a spell to make the entrance invisible to regular people. Levi, curious as always, asks if sorcerers would still be able to see them. Locke reassures her, explaining that he's placed a magical lock that only allows the door to be opened for its rightful owners, keeping everyone else out. Locke instructs everyone to point their hands at the passage door to become registered as owners. They praise Locke and eagerly rush to do it. Lucilla compliments Locke for the door. Locke plans to magically repair and strengthen the passage and connect it to the castle's exit, allowing Eric's family to move freely. This makes Eric's kids happy, as Locke can visit the royal palace too. At the Adventurers Guild, Celerise and Shia search for missing persons requests, suspecting others might be involved in kidnapping like Cabino. Unfortunately, they don't find any such requests. They eventually run into Ario and Jeannie, expressing their gratitude for their assistance in taking down Cabino. The siblings kindly ask Shia to reach out whenever they need a hand, then share their plans with Celerise and Shia about a quest to rid the sewers of demonic rats. After saying their goodbyes, Ario and Jeannie depart. As Ario and Jeannie head towards their rat extermination mission, Celerise brings up the topic of Locke's true identity and estate, speculating that Ario and Jeannie might be in for a shock if they ever find out. In the meantime, as they walk toward the sewers, Ario turns to Jeannie and asks her who she thinks Locke really is. Jeannie responds by noting that Locke claims to be an F rank, but his strength suggests he may have been a high-level hunter or scout originally. Ario wonders why Locke is keeping his identity a secret, and Jeannie suggests he might be running from someone dangerous. In the sewer, they face a swarm of demonic rats, and Ario notices these rats are different, not fearing humans. Meanwhile, in the capital, Celerise and Shia search for missing people, finding many cases involving runaways, disappearances, and complicated situations. They return to the guild where they see Aron and other guild workers looking worried, because Ario and Jeannie still haven't returned 8 hours later. Celerise rushes to get Locke while Shia hurries to the sewers. Locke and Celerise quickly catch up with Shia in the sewers, and he asks for a situation update. She informs him that the siblings likely entered through the entrance but haven't returned, and there are no other exits. Locke suggests they move forward, and he'll use magic search. Since Ario is a sorcerer, they might pick up a signal from them. With the magic search, Locke continues to follow their trail into a tunnel. They run into a swarm of demonic rats, and Locke decides to eliminate all of them at once to save time. As they venture deeper into the tunnel, they stumble upon a massive demonic rat feasting on its kin. Shia dashes away, convinced she heard Jeannie's voice. Locke also flees, leaving Cellarize behind. Eventually, Locke reunites with Aereo and Jeannie, who are hidden in a corner. Aereo apologizes for the scare, and while they're fine, their clothes suffer a nibble or two. They brief Locke on the situation just as Cellarize comes sprinting, pursued by the giant rat. Locke instructs Aereo to use his most potent flame attack, but Aereo worries about suffocation due to the thin air. Locke promises to redirect the flames upwards. Next, Locke asks Cellarize to show the rat's belly, and after some reluctance, she leaps high, lands on the rat, stabs it with her sword, and exposes its belly. Locke commands Aereo to unleash all of his firepower on the rat. Aereo shoots a fiery ball at demonic rats, but it's hotter than expected. They later ponder the enormous size of the demonic rat. Suddenly, Cellarize discovers a mysterious item next to the rat and shares it with Locke, suggesting it may have magical significance. Shia examines it and identifies it as an evil god statue. After their chat, Locke heads to Marquis Mastifon's estate to apologize, but is met by a gate servant who questions his purpose there. He tries to explain the property damage incident, but the servant rudely dismisses him, insisting there was no damage. Locke decides to call it quits and heads out. Meanwhile, at Marquis Mastifon's mansion, vampires have somehow taken over, and their leader watches Locke's departure. Surprised that Locke has already reached the mansion, he instructs a maid to investigate Locke, especially regarding his family. Back at the Adventurers Guild, everyone is ecstatic about Aereo and Jeannie's return. Locke walks in and Aereo inquires about his meeting with the estate owner, and whether he'll need to repay them. Locke relays what the lady said, leaving Aereo in shock. Cellarize wonders if the Marquis' nonchalant response is due to his high status in the country. Arone joins the chat, mentioning a case of 3 workers vanishing from Marquis Mastifon's estate during Cellarize and Shia's search for missing people, which was cancelled by the quest giver. Aereo and Jeannie express thanks to Locke, bid farewell, and return home. On their way, a vampire's servant discreetly observes them. In their estate, Cellarize and Shia discuss Locke's suspicions about the Marquis. Shia clarifies that only the quest giver withdrew, and the missing people remain unfound. Cellarize questions why the guild hasn't taken action, and Shia explains that if the quest giver retracts it, the guild can't intervene further. Shia suspects the situation holds clues about the enemy's true identity. It appears the enemy manipulated the quest giver to cancel the search quest, a skill often linked to vampires, who can charm others into not recognizing them. That night, Locke assembles everyone, and shares a strong suspicion that the Marquis' estate might be under vampire influence. Eric questions this, given Marquis Mastifon's capable background in government roles, but he's been absent for a month, citing health issues. Locke presents evidence, an item that caused the sewer's demonic rat to grow. Shia identifies it as the Gods of the Dark statue, shocking Eric and Golan, as it resembles the statue Locke struggled with before. Shia confirms their suspicion. Back at the Marquis' mansion, a captured man secretly passes a letter to his dog, Tama, asking him to deliver it to the king. Inside the mansion, the vampire leader orders his underlings to hunt down Locke. Meanwhile, at Locke's estate, the team continues their discussion. During their chat, vampire underlings suddenly crash in through the windows. Locke rescues Milka from one of them, while Cellarize searches for her sword. A vampire attempts to attack her, but her dad comes to the rescue, advising her to not rely on what she doesn't have when hunting prey. Golan realizes these vampires are not your usual underlings. They easily break through their magical barrier, and they might possess cursed powers. Eric warns Locke to not use his magic to avoid revealing his identity. The others in the room individually start fighting the vampires, and manage to defeat most of them effortlessly. Lucilla tries to lead Milka to the cellar for safety, but right before they can move, a vampire bursts through the window, reaching out for them. In a clever move, Locke steps in, using an illusion to make the vampire think it's being strangled by the Demon Lord. While the others are battling the vampire, Locke senses a vampire bat watching them, and communicates with the vampire leader through it, warning him to stay away from his family, before eliminating the bat. After the team defeats all the vampires, they receive an unexpected visit from Tama, whom Eric recognizes as the Marquis' pet dog. Tama delivers a letter to Eric, and after reading it, Eric shares the alarming news that their situation is more dire than they thought. Their enemy is a new High Lord, and the target is the Marquis family's youngest daughter, Lady Philly. It's a race against time. Mastifon's pet dog leads the way with Locke and King Eric in tow. Meanwhile, back at Locke's residence, Milka seems rather worried and Golan questions if she's okay. Golan reassures that Locke and Eric won't run into a swarm of vampire lords like they did before. They haven't done wrong sending just the two of them out. He is a bit worried, as there are bound to be many subordinates still lurking, but they have to focus on their priority of moving Gerberga somewhere safe. He suggests they ask for Queen Levi's help via the underground passage. Celerai steps in to restate that Locke will be fine and Milka shouldn't worry so much. He has saved the country many times before. He might not look like it, but Shia chimes that he's quite capable, despite first impressions. Golan wraps it up by saying everyone in the room has been saved by Locke at one time or another, and if that doesn't prove he's capable, what will? Locke and Eric arrive at what seems to be the gates of Mastophan's home. They are a family of 3 currently residing: Marquis, his wife, and his youngest daughter. Locke and Eric's strategy is to go full frontal, as they'll be discovered anyway and there's no time to waste. Eric now has a pending duty to cover the expenses of the damages caused on the Mastophan's property. Locke blasts through the gates, which alerts all the subordinates within the estate. They charge into the house and it's a full-blown battle, where Locke executes a magical endowment enchant skill. From some sort of prison within the house, the Mastophan family can hear the ensuing battle. Help has come faster than they expected. Once the subordinates have been defeated, Locke asks the pet dog Tama to lead him and Eric to where the rest of the family are being kept. The dog leads them through passageways and then down some stairs. At some point, Eric senses danger and halts the dog, stepping in front to take charge and protect. A vampire materializes, stating he didn't expect any less as they easily defeated the subordinate maids from earlier. At this point, it must be custom for the bad guy to ask for the identity of their opponent because they're constantly doing it. Eric doesn't budge in this case when the question is thrown at him. They exchange blows and Eric's mask falls off in the process, revealing his identity to the vampire. The vampire talks about command and divine protection from the Dark God, and a little sister for which he must avenge. The vampire releases a simultaneous attack, which releases long tentacles from him to attack Eric. The vampire also has a cloning skill, and Eric keeps striking at decoys. His saving grace, however, is his speed that helps him dodge retaliating attacks from the vampire. Eric is able to get the last laugh by strategically getting behind the vampire and striking from there. He lands another strike with his sword through the vampire's head, and it's game over. The vampire turns to ash, leaving behind its medallion. Tama resumes its duty, scratching at a section of the wall, which Eric interprets to mean leads to where the Mastophan family are being held captive. There seems to be a magical lock on it, and Eric calls out to Locke for his assistance. But where is Locke? He seems to have disappeared. Locke seems to be somewhere in the passageway, killing off a heavy number of vampires with a heap of ash to prove so. He spots a door to a room which he believes the vampires were protecting. It has a magical lock which he easily breaks, referring to it as a piece of cake. In the room, he finds a large mirror. Meanwhile, Eric in Locke's absence is left with no choice but to use brute force to break through the magic lock he's faced with. The Mastophan family are waiting behind the door, Marquis holding tightly to his wife in momentary fear. King Eric explains he got Marquis's letter, and Marquis in return is marveled that the king personally came to the rescue. Maybe it's safe to say that Tama is the true hero, as it successfully delivered the letter to the king in the first place. It could have strayed away, but kept its duty to the Mastophan family and Lady Philly. A true dog hero indeed. Speaking of Philly though, where is she? Marquis takes the king on a trip down memory lane, to a time they employed a butler upon someone's recommendation. He was rather good and effective at his job, and within 6 months, he was successfully managing all of the estate's housekeeping. About a month ago, the butler changed. He seized all of the other servants and imprisoned the family. Turns out he was a vampire lord all along who started to summon other vampires. The royal capital has a barrier, and such creatures should not have been able to get past it in the first place. In conclusion, the vampire's infiltration leads back to about a year ago. It's also revealed that a vampire high lord took Philly away. In another scene, Locke is shown placing his palm on the mirror. He analyzes it must be a teleportation circle, and on the other side of the mirror would be the enemy's headquarters. Locke continues to press against the mirror, and it seems he's getting sucked in, until he's attacked by more vampires. He does his thing, slicing through them with his signature sword. They are curious to know if he has the divine protection of the Dark God on him as well, but Locke is too annoyed to answer, obliterating them once and for all. On Eric's end, the vampire lord rises from the ash and strikes with his tentacles. It looks like he's hit Eric where it hurts, but his cloak has a charm on it cast by his wife. He announces that he has the divine protection of a goddess, before finishing off the vampire and breaking its medallion in 2. Golan and the rest approach Queen Levi with the proposal of taking care of Gerberga, to which she agrees to. Back with Eric, he gets the Mastophan couple out of the room, and questions why their daughter is a target for the vampires. The Marquis shamefully admits Philly has had a recent obsession with magic, alchemy in particular. It led her to unintentionally create a Fool's Stone. Fool's Stone. It's the antimatter of the Sage's Stone. It has the power to accumulate and possess curses. According to the alchemists of the royal court, it has indeed been reported that the cursed medallions are made from Fool's Stone. It still doesn't clarify why the vampires would try to take Philly's life, seeing as she is probably more important to them alive than dead. It appears that the spark that led to the refining of the Fool's Stone required a channel that connected to another world, and their altered program required the existence of a spiritual medium to open and summon a channel with the other world. It's the summoning of the gods of the dark. Meanwhile, Locke has located Philly, who has been held captive by the gods of the dark, slowly breaching both worlds. Locke plans to rescue Philly. To get to Philly, Locke and his giant sword would have to go through some other vampire dude with sorcerer skills. The vampire creates some sort of portal or shield, and when Locke strikes at it, more than half of his sword disappears. The vampire explains Locke is now connected to the underworld, and the missing part of his sword exists there in a different dimension. Since his sword is now basically worthless, Locke discards it, stating he's still very much so powerful without it. He packs a mean punch, drawing out blood from hitting the vampire many times and squarely in the face. The vampire tells him to not get ahead of himself. Turns out the vampire regenerates quickly and acts just as fast. As he starts to create another sorcery spell, 3 loopholes appear from above, and a beast wielding a sword emerges from them alongside 2 others. The vampire has summoned the Ma-Jinn. This should be impossible, according to Philly, unless the High Lord can use dark magic that is linked to ancient magic. The vampire commands the Ma-Jinn to deal with an unfazed Locke. His only surprise seems to be that there are surviving Ma-Jinn to begin with. Locke creates a series of spells that cause the beasts to cover their ears in agony, over what seems to be an irritating sound only they can hear. It's so bad that they return back to the holes where they came from. Both the High Lord and Philly are beyond confused about what just happened. Locke vaguely states that he's a celebrity in the other dimension. The High Lord retorts he still has no idea what's going on, but whatever deception Locke has used has no effect on him. It's just a lot of talk and no action, because before the High Lord can do his thing, Locke already delivers his point-blank magic buckshot. That leaves the gigantic beast thing still holding Philly captive. It opens its mouth and lets out dark air, making Locke wonder what it's manifesting. Meanwhile, Eric and the Mastiphon couple have found the room with the mirror, and they can hear strange, terrifying sounds coming through it. Eric tells quickly that the mirror is a teleportation mirror, and it cannot be accessed unless by a sorcerer. Whatever is happening beyond the mirror, they can only hope that Locke is in control. The Marquis' curiosity gets the better of him. He wants to know if Locke is one of the royal sorcerers since he's so famous. King Eric clarifies Locke is a close buddy that goes all the way back. Philly has a request for Locke. She wants Locke to kill her, claiming it's what she deserves for creating the Fool's Stone that has caused so much mayhem. She did it unintentionally, but it helped the dark beings in so many ways. If she dies, then the evil god currently holding her captive will stop manifesting. The evil god is trying to open a path into their world by using her as a vessel to attract other gods. Locke asks her real intentions behind the Fool's Stone creation, as it's not something that's created on a whim. She explains she wasn't doing alchemical research like everyone thinks. She specialized in researching ancient languages, the analysis of literature from ancient magical kingdoms. Among the literature she was able to successfully analyze was something on alchemy. Wanting to verify their legitimacy, she became engrossed in ancient alchemy. Ancient magical techniques do not simply influence the logic of this world. They exploit godly powers by forming a channel with another dimension. Locke shares a similar desire towards ancient magic research, and believed that no one would surpass him in that desire, but here is Philly who proves otherwise. Locke's sword is returned to him back at full length, since the connection between the other dimension is broken now that the High Lord and Conjurer are laying dead. He then confidently announces to Philly to hold on tight, as she will be reunited with her parents soon. He performs a quadruple barrier, which sends a surge of energy straight at the evil god. The move is so spectacular that a beastfolk father and daughter see it from afar, and the daughter questions if the light they've just witnessed is a shooting star. He calls it an ominous light and asks her to return home. He then tells a messenger to alert the royal capital. He hopes what they've just witnessed is a false alarm against all odds. The evil god has not yet been defeated, and Philly is still being held captive. Hopefully not for long, as Locke has resumed his stance with his signature sword intact and complete. This must be the first time both the evil god and Philly are noticing the significance of the sword, which is currently glowing with power. Locke's quadruple barrier attack wasn't enough to finish off the evil god, because it's from a dimension with rules that don't conform to his world's logic. This is why his magical barrier was rendered invalid. His sword, however, does conform to the logic of the evil god's dimension. His next strike will not be rendered invalid. The evil god opens its maw and starts to chant something. Some of its tentacles fall off and become beasts of their own, with large, eerie eyes and limbs to attack. Locke refers to them as offspring of an evil god. Philly continues to watch rather amused. Locke seems to be having fun fighting the evil god. Indeed, it does seem like all fun and games, until Locke is struck with a dark ray of light, which causes a hole in the middle of his chest. Locke collapses to the floor as the evil god is still chanting. Back at the castle, Levi and Golan recall Locke was indeed a bookworm for ancient magic research. So bad it could be considered an addiction. There was even a time he faced off dragons just for books written in cryptic ancient languages, and he did manage to decipher some of them. Although that doesn't necessarily mean Locke practices ancient magic, does it? Locke's ability to learn the life transfer draining touch skill that the Majin commander used is because the learning skill itself was the ancient spell that formed the basis of the Majin's dark magic. Learning. This spell is composed of 4 different spells: learning, analysis, conversion, and reconstruction. Fundamentally, one can instantly understand the opponent's cast magic. This was a technique incidentally discovered through ancient magic research. Philly can't see any way out other than to commit suicide, now that Locke is presumably dead. Locke gets back on his feet and states he has a promise to keep. She will see her parents again, and although it was a complicated spell, he learned it. He recreates the dark ray, giving the evil god a taste of his own medicine. Philly is released into his arms in the process. It's not over yet, though. Locke tells Philly to hide somewhere safe and keep her gratitude till after they've escaped. Locke continues to execute the dark ray spell, but the evil god regenerates quickly. His right shoulder receives a severe blow that burns off a chunk. As cool as a dark ray spell is, it's not proving fruitful. Locke tries something else. The spell is unstable and exhausts an incredible amount of mana. But if he were to use the Majin ruler's sword as a catalyst to draw out his maximum power, the thing is, if it doesn't work out, then they're all doomed. The spell is called Spatial Collapse, and Locke, ever the risk-taker, decides to execute it. Even Philly catches on quickly as she remains on the sidelines still watching, rather than taking cover. The attack is futile, and Locke has succeeded in isolating the entire space. Philly sees it's rather a massive space, meaning amazing magical power. Now for the finishing touches. ROM Space Implosion. An ultra-dense spatial cage that even the surrounding space is warping from the gravity. It's basically a neutron star. Locke tops it off with the Dark Ray Extravaganza, and now it's game over. Locke collapses once more, but this time it's because he has exhausted all of his mana. Philly is there to catch him, though. On the bright side, the evil god has disappeared, and that's a relief. Philly and Locke teleport back to a waiting king and parents who are glad to see them both. Eric questions the state of things, and Locke lets him know he has defeated the evil god. The Marquis then realizes this must be the legendary Great Sage. Locke's secret is becoming not so much of a secret as more people keep figuring it out. At the scene of a battle, a vampire stands in the midst of dust and ash. Once again, the world was saved by the legendary Great Sage. No surprise. A human who was able to defeat the evil god, even if it was just the head. A personal request was sent out by the guildmaster to a group of A-rank adventurers. Their job is to gather as much intel that was left over at the hideout. A man referred to as Laboro is asked by a member of his crew to cast a magical exploration spell. Laboro might have one eye obstructed by an eye patch, but it doesn't stop him from seeing something big. Literally big. A large woman leering close from over the mountains, enough to make him sweat. His comrade shakes him back to reality. It's gone as fast as it appeared. To think an A-rank adventurer like himself was almost bewitched from eye contact just makes him wonder who on earth did he see. Someone far more dangerous than a High Lord, it seems. Locke's shoulder has been healed by Levi's healing power, so it's a lot better now, but his hair color has yet to return to a darker shade. The king apologizes for sending him on such a dangerous mission by himself, and Locke basically replies he wasn't forced to take charge, and Eric shouldn't be afraid to rely on him more. It's just that for Eric, the thought of losing his close buddy isn't a walk in the park. One time 10 years ago was enough for him. Golan chimes in. He too complains that Locke has a solo habit, and that's not cool as they're comrades. Locke apologizes and switches the conversation to the evil god, asking if its hideout has been discovered. Golan updates them about the A-rank adventurers he sent out that have yet to report back. As for the Mastafon family, they've been able to track down the person who referred the evil butler about a year ago. When Philly was ordered to make a fool stone using alchemy, she deliberately made a faulty product with the pretense of discarding it, flushing it down the sewers on purpose. She wanted someone to find it. Her exact plan might not have been for the sewer rats to find it, but it did lead to everyone discovering the artifact. There is still the question of whether the vampires have always acted out this systematically, and it seems that from all indications, they are merely following the orders of a higher order, someone even greater than the High Lord. 10 years ago, the war was between Locke and the Ma-Jinn. This time, the enemy is different. It's a face-off between humans and the vampires. Meanwhile, Lady Philly is high up on a tower scattering petals all over the Mastafon cemetery. The servants who lost their lives to subordination are buried in this cemetery, and Lady Philly's purpose is to scatter petals to provide repose for their souls. The petals are from the flowers that the estate maids carefully cultivated in the courtyard. As time goes on, Locke's hair color begins to change back. These days he has the massive residence to himself mostly. Celerise has been going out on quests with Ario and Jeannie lately. As of today, she's in search of a livestock thief. Shia and Garb the wolf went home to the Beastfolk tribe for the first time in a while. The two have been getting along quite well. Lucilla and Gerberga the chicken have become regular playmates with the princess. Then there's Milka, who has found a hobby in cooking, and is with one of Golan's chefs at the estate to teach her now. Locke steps outside to do some sweeping. Fallen leaves he piles up and burns. Philly approaches him with Tama. They haven't seen each other in quite a while, and Tama seems to have gained weight. Philly has come to apologize for not knowing who exactly her hero is. Her father scolded her as well, so she gets on her knees and asks Locke to excuse her impertinence. Locke clarifies he is no one but Locke, an F-rank adventurer, so Philly doesn't need to execute the extra gestures. Locke notices she has come with a suitcase and questions her about it. Eric did mention to Locke earlier that he would need a new assistant. That assistant will be Philly. King Eric has been rather cocky, but Locke can't overlook that Philly is talented. There's also the possibility that the vampires might attack again. This means that the safest place for Philly is by Locke's side. Congratulations to him are in order, because his family just got bigger. Let's take a little journey into the past, when 20 years ago at the west end of the Kingdom of Garzand, north of the Kingdom of Mandilabar, near the border of Ringane, an ancient ruin is discovered. Someone trespassed into the ruin and released a seal on something locked and hidden within it. This action will become a grave mistake, as it brought forth the calamity that caused the annihilation of Garzand and almost Mandilabar, in what would later be known as the Crimson Week of Black Dragons. The mistake will also make ground for the legendary adventurer party and the sage known as Luck Franzen. Here marks the beginning of their story. A week before the tragic event, the adventurer party just comprised of the duo, Golan, a 23-year-old B-rank warrior, and Luck, a 19-year-old B-rank sorcerer who continued to research magic on his own after dropping out of an academy of magic at the age of 16. The duo teamed up after a quest and continued adventuring together. Here, Golan asks Luck for the earnings from their recent adventuring together, as he remembers Luck telling him about a magical item. Luck spent the earnings, a sum of 20 million repy, on acquiring the item he had been searching for, the Artemis's Arrow. This item had the ability to slay 1,000,000 demons in one shot, and would prove useful and worth the price later on. Golan, after hearing the ability of the item, agrees it's a fair price. Golan still thought it was a stupid purchase since he never bought a bow to go with it. Now, the main purpose of Golan's visit was to inform Luck of the recently discovered ruin, the earlier described one. Quite uncertain if it is fortunate or unfortunate news. Since Luck has been searching for a quest involving investigation of unexplored ruins, he jumps at the news, and readies to set out immediately to Kataya, in the Kingdom of Garzand where the ruin resides. The guild does not place any restrictions on how many adventurers can participate in the quest, and this leaves them on a first-come, first-serve kind of situation. Even if they wanted to get there fast and before other adventurers, Luck spent all of the money on the Artemis's Arrow, so they have no funds left to hire a fast horse. Desperate and even willing to take a loan, they set out for the Kataya ruin. 2 days later, they get to the Kingdom of Garzand and meet a tragic sight. A long line of refugees from Kataya, the survivors of the devastation brought upon Kataya by a weir of dragons. Normally, this would not be a safe or wise time to excavate ruins, and they both knew it. To make matters worse, Golan would be useless against the dragons as they fly and attack aerially. This duo continues their quest as Golan believes that Luck will figure something out, just like he has done countless times when Golan was at death's door. But first, Golan decides that they head to the guild, and informed them about the situation, which, at the time, was the best course of action. On getting to the royal capital of Golmud in the Kingdom of Garzand, they meet the branch head of the Golmud Guild branch, Karambit, who is thrown into a state of utter panic and crisis, as the casualties occurred only a day after the report of the revival of dragons was made by a guild adventurer. Karambit is frantically looking for information about the current state of the calamity, when Luck and Golan come right in with the information they have. The duo arrived tired but still delivered the information, telling Karambit and the other guild members present that the fire would be extinguished the next day, but at the moment it was spreading. Everything that caught fire was gone, especially the humans, as 30% of the citizens were scorched to death, leaving just 70% as the injured, and that percentage is about 100,000 people. If the dead were not killed by the hot flame, they were devoured by the dragons. Curious, Karambit asks how many dragons were at the ruins in Kataya, so they inform him that they were only able to confirm the presence of 4 dragons. They add that one of the dragon dens is west of the town, and they were black dragons. Immediately, Karambit knew this was a highly sensitive situation, and given that the dragons are black ones, they had no chance of salvaging the issue through negotiation. Topping it off would be the fact that there were about 10 dragons in the den. There are 5 types of dragons based on their physical color. The types include the red, white, blue, green, and black dragons. Among this species, the black dragon is considered the most dangerous, because the satisfaction they get is from destruction and devouring humans. Therefore, trying to talk to the dragon would prove useless. To mankind, the black dragons should never have been allowed to exist. With all the information that they shared with him, Karambit pled that they join in the subjugation force with the guild branch, as he was about to relay the new information to the chivalric order, which is the main force of the subjugation force. Instead of being paid, Luck asks the branch head to give them priority in the excavation of the Kataya ruin exploration. The branch head knows that this is a huge favor and a big ask, but with the desperate need for all the help the guild branch could get, he agrees to consider it, as long as they contribute well enough to the subjugation. So the fulfillment depends on how the two do in battle against the dragons. In 2 days, a makeshift adventurer party consisting of C ranks and aboves, and the chivalric order set off to subjugate the black dragons. The chivalric order and their servants made up a headcount of 1,200 men, and the adventurers that came together consisted of 60 C ranks, 19 B ranks, and 7 A ranks, which is an achievement for an impromptu assembly of adventurers. Suddenly, a spectacle ensued as someone walks in claiming to be the royal hero, invited by the king to join in the subjugation. Luck notices something off about this individual immediately, a surrounding of dark mist. Amid the crowd, there was also another suspiciously masked man observing the so-called hero. The adventurers around were elated to have someone strong and renowned on their side. Then, the unexpected happened. The chivalric order, which was supposed to be the main force in the subjugation, decided out of cowardice to set camp in the entrance of the royal capital, under the guise of protecting the royal capital when they truly do not want to lay their lives in harm's way on the front line. This made the branch head Karambit so angry, as it was left with just 86 adventurers as the subjugation force. Fear also set back the Holy Magic Order, which was meant to be a helpful part of the subjugation force in terms of magic. The archpriest was filled with fear for his life and decided that they stay put in the royal capital, falsely attributing it to the will of God. One priestess stood out, as she was determined to contribute to the subjugation even if it meant her excommunication from the Holy Magic Order. She called the archpriest out on his cowardice, even when he threatens that she would regret leaving, making it clear that she has parted ways with the order, and his fear is a sign that God has forsaken him. This priestess's name is Levi Leonard Ardennes. Stunning, she drew the attention of all when she took off the veil. The hero asked her to allow him to be her personal bodyguard since she looked so beautiful. He introduces himself as Eric Mandilabar, which leaves Levi confused as it turned out that she was familiar with Eric before this day. The other real adventurers get right into coming up with a good strategy, but it seemed hard to do, facing the reality of less than 90 men against over 10 black dragons. It all boiled down to whether they could stop the dragons in their tracks, that is, trapping or grounding the dragons. Thankfully, there were top-notch adventurers available like Old Man Raglan, an A-rank sorcerer, and the maniac warrior Tor, and some other bona fide ones. An idea showed up, involving Raglan using his magical web, which is powerful and can hold dragons down to the earth, but has the limit of just 4 in one go. With this, the warrior Tor and the others would have to distract the dragons and split them up into several groups, so it is easy to bring them down little by little. Looking at their numbers, most of the adventurers couldn't think of a better strategy than that. In the conclusion of their plans, the conceited impersonator butts in, asking them why they went on to plan without his permission or even inclusion. The top-notch adventurers ask him to just watch their backs for now, jokingly because they didn't find him reliable. Here, Levi takes a look at the suspiciously masked man and recognizes that he is the real Eric, causing Eric to move away from her anxiously. Meanwhile, the imposter was making plans to punish the others for not acknowledging him as their leader. He plans to use one of the special items given to him from the king to show them why he should be their leader. Golan asks Luck what he thinks about the current strategy, to which he dodges responsibility, saying if it were left to him, he would think of a better strategy, as the amount of damage they might suffer from the current one is uncertain. Luck adds that he would just focus on being the backup. Sooner than expected, his desires were handed to him that night, as the Black Dragons attack and raid them instead of the other way around. Struggling to keep up with this awful surprise and guard their lives, they try to retreat and regroup, but it proves difficult. Things started to take a bad turn as the dragons took advantage of the confusion and started killing them one by one, starting with the A-rank adventurers. Old Man Raglan and Tor went down to the well-coordinated attack of the dragons. Forced to do something to avoid annihilation, Golan and Luck team up to take the dragons down. Another masked adventurer supports their plan, providing wind protection. Luck uses a magic lance to lower the dragon to the ground, creating room for Golan to land a strike. Even when Golan did, it had little effect on the dragon, and it still did not affect the dragon when the weapon got enchanted. Levi casts a heavenly protection spell to heal and enchant them. Luckily, it was time for the true hero to shine. He took off his scarf and asked Luck to lower the dragons to the ground, assuring that it was all Luck had to do. When Luck lowers the dragon in a dazzling manner, Eric took down 2 dragons in one slash, till there were none left, astounding everyone. At the end of the raid, there were 5 A rankers, 2 B rankers, and 2 C rankers injured, and this was a major blow, leaving them no choice but to ask for help again from the chivalric order. Next, the real Eric exposes the imposter by bringing out the dragon flute the so-called hero used. At this point, the imposter is petrified and begins to explain with fear. On further probing, he discloses that a woman gave him the flute, and told him that he could use it to bend dragons to his will, but he didn't think that it would cause all this chaos. The woman was a female elf invited to the royal palace as a guest of honor. Even Golan knew that the woman that showed up to the palace was an imposter as well. Luck confirms it by informing the others that the guy had traces of magical power surrounding him, and was likely under some kind of spell. The others were stunned at Luck's ability to decipher something like that, as sorcerers above his rank like Old Man Raglan didn't notice. Luck has other curiosities like the identity of the swordsman and the sword. They all get to understand that the swordsman is the real hero and prince of Mendilabar, Eric Imgart Mendilabar, and the sword, Levi explained, was a holy sword. With this behind them, they took to Luck for directions as to the next course of subjugation, especially the prince. Meanwhile, back at the royal castle of Garzand, the female elf murdered the king, Zaius. They get to the entrance of the Black Dragon Den under Luck's plan and leadership, which was decided about 10 hours before they got to the Dragon's Den. According to the hero Eric, Luck was the most qualified to draft strategies, and there's a high chance he's the only one with accurate enough information about the Black Dragons among those present. The masked adventurer accompanying them almost agreed immediately, adding that Luck was calm during the Black Dragon attack and level-headedly figured out what their target was. The others agree even though there were higher-ranked adventurers among them. As long as he has been nominated by the hero Eric, his leadership is a done deal. Luck wasn't really a fan of responsibility and reliability, so he didn't jump at the position, but had to fill the shoes reluctantly. Now back to their plan for the Black Dragons. Luck's strategy was to avoid a full-blown deathmatch with the Black Dragons like what had happened earlier. His plan involves Golan and the warriors luring the Black Dragons out of their den. There's no need to fight them head-on. They just simply need to hide and let them move past the den. While the Black Dragons are away, Luck plans to plant some magical bombs inside of their den, killing them once they return to the den. The dragons would be lured out with the dragon flute and far away, so there's enough time to set up the bombs. They progressed with the plan, luring the dragons out but almost got noticed by one of the Black Dragons. However, they were saved by Luck's mind obstruction magic. The dragons did not rely on their nose despite their intellect, because if they did, the plan would be futile and end in their death. The Black Dragons were moving faster than expected, and it took a while before they realized that this spelled doom, as the Black Dragons were heading straight for the royal capital, without Golan and the warriors using the dragon flute. The branch head Guildmaster Krambit headed to the capital with some adventurers, to assist the chivalric order. The helmet-wearing adventurer asks Golan to hop on her horse so they could get the dragon flute to Luck, so he calls them back once he was done setting the bombs, a small alteration to their original plan. The adventurer takes off the helmet and armor to reveal a voracious and gorgeous woman, which left Golan flustered, even in their current crisis. She introduces herself as Marguerite Morton, and asks him to strip his armor off so the horse gets there faster. Meanwhile, in the den, Luck together with the hero and Levi meets a surprise. The ruin was not made to hold the black dragons. It was made to imprison something even stronger. The prison was made for a remnant of the mythical days, a god of calamity that has destroyed civilization many times over, the evil dragon. Luckily, the evil dragons are still sealed away in the prison, but it looks like someone has managed to release one. This someone is the impersonator of the female elf, the woman who gave the dragon flute. In the goriest of ways, an evil dragon appears in the royal capital and begins to cause havoc. The plan of the female vampire is to kill as many citizens as feeding the Fool's Stone would require. Evil dragons are apostles of a demon that went against the gods, and legend has it that 10 evil dragons kept the earth in flames for a century. From the camp the chivalric order made, they could see the royal capital engulfed by a curse that would kill everyone in it, and on the other side, they're met with a weir of dragons heading their way. In a twinkle, the black dragons incinerate the chivalric order and head to the capital. On the other hand, Luck has no choice other than to jump into the prison and seal the evil dragons and black dragons again. The others couldn't join him as the job was only for a sorcerer, and they would just be burdens. Using his cultivated technique of learning, where he absorbs the skills and spells cast from ancient magic and can replicate it, he learns the several hundred-layered sealing magic of the Forbidden Tome, the existence of which he withheld from Eric, this technique being his only chance at victory. The female vampire immediately senses that someone has touched the seal barrier of the evil dragons, so she sends the black dragons back to their den to keep the intruders out. Unfortunately, her plan was coming together, as the door to the interdimensional rift appeared and started opening. Forbidden Tome is the general term for a magical tool that is always employed as a catalyst for powerful incantations, which does not always take the shape of a book, though they have something in common, a wealth of information recorded within them. Learning, a high-class magic that enables the analysis of any magic that is touched, even ancient or dark magic. The hero Eric and Levi can only wait and hope that Luck succeeds, before the black dragons return to the den. They are soon met by their fear as black dragons storm the den with attacks. The hero defends to the best of his ability against the attacks. As usual, he cuts through a couple, but soon realizes that the dragons were too much and outnumbered their forces. A black dragon was about to do him in, but Golan and Marguerite arrive just in time to save Eric and fight with him. Together they fight the dragons off, giving Luck the opportunity to seal the dragons again, as they were sure he will definitely pull it off. Before the evil female vampire could bring her plans into fruition, bringing Majin from the other dimension and leading an era of chaos, the flow of the curse got severed and Luck restored the seal of the Forbidden Tome. This resulted in all the black dragons and the evil dragon returning to its prison, but it brought something stronger back. The last boss in Evil Dragon. This evil dragon had an unimaginable explosive power and could even teleport. What's worse is the fact that it was still roaming in the sky after the seal was restored. Regardless of the strength, they were safe because of the barrier seal that Luck restored. The reason why that evil dragon still remained in their plane was because it made a direct contact with the evil female vampire. Therefore, it still has a connection to the realm of the living. Quickly, they were spotted by the dragon. And this meant bad news, as the barrier would not last long if they didn't do anything about the dragon. The sealing barrier was made to entrap the evil dragon, but isn't impervious to external attacks. Left with no other choice, Luck is forced to use his 20 million rupee ace, the Artemis's Arrow. Coupled with a magic circle derived from ancient magic that even top royal sorcerers have never used before, he makes it rain on the evil dragon, obliterating it in the process. This feat made all that saw marvel. The evil vampire lady gave up, sucked on the blood of those around her, and retreated. The kingdom lost her king and the chivalric order that defended the city. But the good part is no harm came to the inhabitants of the royal capital. Since there were no witnesses to what had appeared in the sky, the enemy's goal remained shrouded in the dark till later on. A month later, we see the adventuring trio going on quests, even when Luck tried neglecting responsibility. The hero Eric explains to him that they both had great power to serve the powerless. But Luck never imagined himself a hero, not until 10 years later, when he would make his 10-year-long last stand against the Majin, and would be immortalized and remembered as a true hero, the legendary sage of Mendilibar and the Archduke of the kingdom, protecting the kingdom from its strongest and evilest foes. It is quite a ridiculous story, but a truly great one. A 19-year-old dropout sorcerer becoming the savior of the world. It starts with a day like any other for Locke and his ever-growing family. It's afternoon and Milka does her bit for the family by making lunch. She calls Celerise to have lunch, but her adopted big sister opts to wait until Shia returns home. Philly also chooses to eat after doing her research for the day. As for the others, they must be having a meeting in Locke's room. Just then, Celerise notices someone coming into the estate. It seems they have a visitor. Meanwhile, at the meeting in Locke's room, Golan is asked about his findings concerning the evil god and vampire movements. Even though he's assigned 3 A-rank parties for the assignment, Golan still bemoans the lack of results. Assigning 3 A-rank parties shows just how dangerous the task is. King Eric admits that even the Privy Council is finding it difficult to understand the plans of the vampires. On one hand, it seems like they've been planning this for a long time, but on the other, some of their attacks make it seem like they're prematurely carrying out their plans. Eric and Golan also believe that Locke's return may be responsible for their impatient actions, given that his return largely coincided with their actions. Locke just wonders why the Majin ruler attempted to return to the world. In the end, Locke suggests that the Majin ruler must have been summoned by the vampires. Eric and Golan don't completely agree that the vampires would do something like that. They usually summon evil gods. Eric also points out that they've ignored one crucial factor so far. It's been mentioned that there's a being who controls the vampires. This means that there might be a vampire boss they aren't aware of yet. Just then, Golan remembers that an A-rank sorcerer with strong magic resistance who once got close to the enemy's hideout revealed that he felt controlled by a powerful charm. Even though there was no direct contact, the sorcerer must have been charmed by feeling their presence from a distance. According to Golan, the sorcerer has previously fought a vampire High Lord. This confirms Locke's suspicion that a higher power than the High Lord exists. Just then, someone knocks at the door, and it's Shia's father, Lord Danton Walcott. Lord Walcott exchanges pleasantries with them and appreciates Locke for taking care of his daughter. He is delighted after he hears that Shia helps Locke just as he helps her. Lord Walcott also greets Lord Golan and King Eric. He's particularly surprised to see King Eric talking with Locke as a friend would. Rumors have flown around about Locke's closeness to the king, but he didn't imagine it would be this close. Lord Walcott moves on to the reason he's at Locke's home. He calls in his younger daughter, Nia, an 8-year-old beastfolk who looks like a younger Shia. He reveals that Nia is here to train as a hunter under Shia's guidance. It seems early, but Lord Walcott reveals that Shia started to train around Nia's age. Shia hurries in while Lord Walcott is still speaking. She greets her father and sister and then asks what the visit is about. Initially, Shia isn't comfortable with the idea of training her sister while still in training herself. Locke cuts in and insists that she will learn while training her sister, and from her lessons with Celerise. She will surely make an excellent teacher. Locke offers to assist Shia in training her sister, which makes Lord Walcott very grateful. Since the beast folk are natural enemies of vampires, Locke concludes that the benefits of training Nia will be great. In the end, Shia accepts to train her sister, and Locke has a new addition to his family. A while later, Locke sets out on an adventure with Nia, Shia, and some others. Lucilla and the divine cock Gerbiga watch over the house. Locke receives a request to exterminate some goblins found somewhere around the mountains close to the royal capital. Nia is not completely used to the life of an adventurer, like how adventurers have to sleep uncomfortably at times. Shia uses the mission to begin Nia's training, as she teaches Nia how to read maps and track down targets. Due to the training, they end up taking a few detours on the way. Thankfully, their mission isn't an urgent one, or at least they think so. They eventually get to the location and find out that it's an ancient ruin which had remained undetected until this moment. They're greeted by the goblins immediately after they enter the ruins. Luckily, it's an easy fight for Locke and his companions. Shia and Nia use coordinated attacks to open up a path through the goblins. Celerise and Shia can easily charge at the hobgoblin right after, effectively ending the battle in a matter of minutes. After the battle, they count and find out that 15 goblins were taken down. Locke confirms this from his wolf garb that all the goblins are gone. All that remains is to extract their magical stone. The mission should be over, but Locke still wonders what the goblins or anyone could be using the ancient ruins for. While still talking, the temperature suddenly gets a lot hotter. Locke sees approaching flames, and uses his magic to stop the flames from hurting any of them. He notices that they're magical flames and are still coming in hot. He must do something or they'll run out of oxygen soon. While he initially planned to wait until the enemy presented an opening, the constant fire means that Locke must use his counter immediately. He uses Magic Gale to push back all the fire to its source, effectively saving himself and his companions. He immediately instructs them to exit the ruins as quickly as possible. While running, they notice that the source of the magical flames that nearly killed them is a dragon. Now, a dragon is a rare sight to see, but it's said that Lucilla had once generated a dragon through illusion magic. Illusion magic is easier to cast when the object is more realistic, which means casting a dragon through the magic must have been difficult for someone like Lucilla who had never seen one. However, one who hasn't seen that monster might not be able to determine whether it's real or an illusion. This must be why Celerise couldn't tell if Lucilla's dragon was real or fake. However, Locke could tell that the dragon was an illusion, which means he must have seen a dragon before and maybe even fought against one. Back at the ancient ruins, everyone looks scared after sighting the dragon. Everyone except for Locke, who looks excited. Locke mutters that it's a great ancient dragon, a rare sight for anyone. The others hope that the dragon is simply illusion magic, but Locke quickly dashes their hopes by saying a live dragon is indeed living very close to the royal capital. Locke steadies himself to fight the dragon by activating strength and physique. He dodges the flames directed towards him by the dragon, and he jumps high and lands a good blow on the creature. The dragon retaliates by using magic flame breath again, which Locke counters by activating his solid ice technique, a magical ice that can't be easily broken down or melted. The dragon senses its defeat and tries to escape, but Locke activates a barrier that prevents it from going away. After winning the battle against the great ancient dragon, Locke offers to let the dragon off the hook if it concedes defeat. The dragon concedes defeat to Locke, and the others are surprised that the creature can speak in human language. As promised, Locke uses Dispel to free the dragon. After that, he asks why the dragon is at the ancient ruins, and the creature reveals that the ancient ruins is a dragon sanctuary. According to the dragon, dragons used concealment magic to conceal the location, before it was broken by the goblin horde, which is why the dragon came back at that moment to reclaim the place. This meant that the flame Locke stopped moments ago was intended to wipe out the goblins. The dragon expresses surprise at seeing a powerful goblin like Locke. They're surprised that the dragon would think they're goblins. The dragon says differentiating goblins and humans is difficult, as they both walk on 2 feet and have noses in the middle of their faces. Wow, racist dragon, huh? Shia compares it to dragons being mistaken for huge lizards, and the dragon now understands that there might be a difference after all. Locke reveals that they came to the ruins to exterminate the goblin horde, and that the dragon flames would have killed all the adventurers if he wasn't there that time. Nia is particularly worried about encountering something so scary on her first adventure, but Locke assures her that being in the face of dragon danger isn't a normal Tuesday for them. The dragon remains surprised that humans could be as powerful as Locke, saying he was totally beaten by the sorcerer. They point out that not all humans are this strong, so the dragon must be careful while spreading his flame next time. Locke is concerned about the dragon calling the ruins a sanctuary, asking if there is something important that the dragon seeks to protect. The dragon says that the place is simply of historical and cultural value. Even though some of the dragons don't mind, this one has personally decided to preserve the ancient ruins. Since the ruins need to be hidden to be preserved, Locke takes them outside and uses a concealment spell to make the place disappear again. The dragon admits that Locke's magic is even greater than the magic of dragons, which should ordinarily be disgraceful to dragons. The dragon also confirms to Locke that there are other dragon ruins close to where humans live. With the increase in the desecration of the ruins, the dragon decides to patrol the place for now. Locke doesn't mind, but he says that the dragon must inform him about any goblins that need to be exterminated close to the royal capital. This is because the army would be mobilized if they saw a dragon wreaking havoc close to the royal capital. He tells the dragon to contact him by using a smoke signal or anything that would grab his attention. The dragon agrees to this plan, and introduces itself as Kaith, admitting that it's grateful for meeting this set of humans first. Locke, Shia, Celerise, Nia, and Garb also introduce themselves to the dragon, and then the ancient creature flies away to begin its patrol. Nia makes joyful noises to indicate their triumph, and she explains that it's customary for the Beastfolk tribe to make a cry of triumph after achieving a great victory. She invites her sister to join in, but Shia doesn't seem too enthusiastic. After all, Locke defeated the dragon, not them. Locke cuts in and reminds Shia that they also succeeded in exterminating a horde of goblins that day. In the end, they all do the customary victory chant before heading home. After a few days, Locke is finally home again. Thankfully, his house has remained in order, as he learned that Golan frequently checked to make sure everything was alright. Milka also informs Locke that Golan is around at the moment. After exchanging pleasantries, Locke tells Golan everything about the mission, including the great ancient dragon. He tells Golan about how he came to a compromise with Kaith, but Golan doesn't completely believe that the dragon is on their side. While he trusts Locke's words, he also points out that it could be a risk, because of how much terror a dragon could bring to their people. Locke understands Golan's point of view, so he decides to ask the dragon to stay away from the royal capital the next time they meet. Later on, Locke goes to meet Philly, who's doing her research. She's been so busy that she didn't notice his presence. When Locke asks about the laboratory, Philly admits that it's a very good one and she's satisfied with it. She admits that she gets so buried in her research and needs Milka to remind her to do other things at times. Locke says that being locked up in there at all times might not be the best for her, so he invites her to take a trip together around town. She interprets Locke's invitation as an asking out, which makes her blush a lot. Imagine her surprise when she finds out that Locke just wants to get groceries, and intends to take everyone along with him. While he's there, Locke wants to know what she's working on. She reveals that it's a talisman, which comes from her wondering whether it's possible to resist a High Lord's charm. According to her, she used alchemy with a sage stone to create the talisman, although she says it still requires a priest's blessing. Locke knows how difficult it is to craft a sage stone, as even the royal palace alchemists produce one a year. Philly insists that crafting the stone isn't difficult as long as the materials are available. This opens Locke's eyes to just how good she is. He calls her a national treasure that he must guard. Later that evening, they go on their walk to get the groceries. Some men in the town look at Philly while she passes, but Locke makes sure they stop staring, giving Philly wrong ideas and making her blush again. They pay for the items using 500 locks, as the lock is the new currency denomination that was introduced in honor of Locke's achievements, alongside the statue commissioned by King Eric. Meanwhile, at the royal palace, Queen Levi is alerted that the royal capital's barrier has been broken. Word spreads quickly and an emergency meeting of all the A-rankers in the capital is called. There's only one objective of the meeting: hunt the ancient dragon. At this point, the entire royal capital is thrown into a state of chaos after hearing about and even seeing the dragon on the loose. Locke clenches his teeth in frustration, as he understands that Keith is the reason for the chaos in the capital. Keith is in the air just above the city, calling out Locke's name. Locke asks Aereo and Jeannie to escort his family back home safely, but Gerbiga wants to tag along. Locke, Garb, Gerbiga, and Nia go on this impromptu mission. According to Nia, her sister had to inform the guild about the situation immediately. Meanwhile, King Eric receives the news of the chaos in his city caused by the dragon's presence. The king instructs to send out the chivalric order, just as Locke previously suspected. He also asks for his holy sword. King Eric wants his army to be ready and his citizens to be moved to safety. But if it comes to it, he plans to take on the dragon himself. Just then, a follow-up report on the case comes in. The recent report says the dragon left the city while in pursuit of someone called Locke. Meanwhile, Locke had gone ahead of Nia and the others to meet the dragon. So when Nia gets to his location, she is surprised to see Locke talking with the dragon instead of exchanging blows. According to Locke, Keith found some ruins occupied by goblins immediately after leaving. Since it was close to the capital, as they agreed, Keith decided to inform Locke about the ruins instead of taking action. What the dragon doesn't realize is that the whole point of not confronting the goblins is to avoid chaos in the city. Locke asks why he wasn't just contacted through a smoke signal, but the dragon insists that he never would have noticed a smoke signal. Locke warns Keith to avoid causing that sort of commotion in the city in the future. Back to the matter at hand, Keith offers to take Locke and his companions to the ancient ruins. Riding on a dragon's back is scary, and Nia can't hide her fear while on the dragon. When Keith speeds up, it takes Locke's magical barrier to prevent the others from falling off the dragon's back. They get to the ruins in no time, and just as Keith said, there are goblins around the place. It looks like Keith has truly learned to differentiate between humans and goblins. Locke asks Nia for her analysis, and the little beastfolk girl says that 3 goblins on the outlook indicate that there should be close to 30 goblins inside. If the goblin horde is that many, Nia suggests that they might be led by a hobgoblin or even a goblin magician. Alright, Shia's little sister is a quick learner. Since it's confirmed, Keith now intends to go inside and roast the entire goblin horde, literally. However, Locke objects, saying that there still might be captured people in the ruins who might die alongside the goblins. Locke says they must work their way into the ruins using both intellect and brute force, making sure that the people don't get hurt alongside the goblins. Locke leaves Keith outside while he goes in with Nia and the others. They make light work of the goblins they see around, defeating every one of them without breaking a sweat. From the footsteps, Nia confirms to Locke that 20 goblins have come to battle. Nia can also tell from the foot size that they are goblin lords. However, there were no footprints at the entrance, and it's well established that goblin lords cannot fly. Locke thinks that there's a possibility that the enemy is using a full-length mirror that has now turned into a 2-way magic door for transportation. This means that there's a possibility the enemies used teleportation magic. Locke instructs Garb to slowly and carefully return to the entrance to meet Keith. He can barely finish talking before he has to block an incoming sneak attack with his sword. The vampire responsible for the attack is impressed that a human would have such a good reaction time, but Locke talks down to the vampire, calling him a lesser vampire and saying blocking his surprise attack wasn't difficult at all. The vampire is enraged and moves to attack, but Locke makes good use of his unstable emotion and quickly cuts his foe. While dying on the ground, the vampire calls out to his comrade to finish the battle. It's a goblin lord that moves in to attack Locke and Nia. It's a nice effort, but in the end, both the vampire and the goblin lord fall to Locke's blade. The vampire decides to use its last strength to attack while Locke is distracted, but the divine cock comes out and crows. The noise comes out as some form of magic that completely vanquishes the enemies. The downside, though, is that the divine cock's crow is very loud, and might have been heard throughout the ruins and even outside. Nia asks why Locke keeps heading inside of the ruins instead of outside. Locke reveals that he's worried about their teleportation equipment and must check it out. Besides, now that they've heard the divine cock cry, he's decided to exterminate everyone there. They get to a spacious room and meet a vampire trying to teleport away, so Locke throws his blade straight through the vampire's chest. Before he can do anything else, Locke finishes him off with the draining touch skill. The other vampire in the room rushes at Locke, but Locke can easily evade his attack. After evading the attack, Locke discovers that the vampire is only looking to destroy the mirror for some reason. However, someone stops the vampire's blade in midair, and it's not Locke or Nia. The vampire's countenance is that of surprise. He asks this strange person why she's there, saying that something might happen to the queen. Meanwhile, Nia picks up a familiar scent from their new foe that she can't exactly interpret. This strange person steps up and addresses Locke, saying she's ready to face him. Has Locke finally met his match?